Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 14 of Sports Clichés. I'm Craig. That's Jay. He's probably on that side of me. On my screen, he's on that side. But we had a very interesting schedule of divisional round games. We got a couple very interesting championship games, some coaching news to go over. It's been a fun week. How are you doing, Jay?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's starting to really come up. The championship games. I obviously I got some stake in this. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is somewhere. There was a point in the season where I think. Cincinnati has been kind of a surprise for us all year, but I mean the Niners. It wasn't looking too good at one point in the season, and yeah, definitely.
3-5?
Definitely the darlings here. Yeah, at one point I believe 2-5. Actually, I want to
Two
say.
and five.
I want to say we were
Oof.
2-5 at one point. But it was. But here we are. Yeah, what a divisional round though. I mean, honestly, we just came
Crazy.
off of probably one of the best, if not the best weekend of playoff football I can remember seeing. I've been, uh, you know, watching these playoff teams for a bit, and it's kind of interesting. Even a team like Cincinnati, which I'm over here on the West Coast. I found myself really trying to check out their games throughout this season. They've been a very interesting story to me. I've had, personally, I guess I had some fantasy interest in the team, but otherwise, it was like once they really started going, kind of midway through the season, they really looked like contenders in the North there. And Burrow wasn't going to get absolutely killed. I couldn't help but kind of you know I'm always going to be paying a little bit more attention to the NFC side of things, just because that's where the Niners are. But as kind of those interesting AFC teams, the Bengals have really they've really come up, and this would be crazy if they're able to do it. What a fucking story that would be from really just the bottom, just about of the AFC last season, and how are you going to keep Burrow alive back there to, potentially right there representing their conference in the championship game.
One win away from the Super Bowl.
That's insane.
Nobody would have ever predicted that.
No. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, last weekend, man, I distinctly remember I was talking to my dad. They didn't get to watch the Bills Chiefs game live because it was happening during a Toronto Maple Leafs game.
Yeah.
So they're
Happens.
watching the Leafs
Sure.
game. I'm in here freaking the fuck out watching this Bills Chiefs game, talking to Jay while I'm doing it.
It's wild.
um,
Wild.
I remember talking to my dad because right before they were about to start it, he goes, "That Rams Buccaneers game may have been the best playoff game I have ever seen." And I went, "The Chiefs Bills game, believe it or not, is crazier."
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just how insane that three of the four games were decided by a last second field goal, and the one that wasn't was won in overtime.
Yeah. And it was tied. It was tied on a last second field goal
Yeah,
within 13 seconds, two plays. Um, what a sequence.
madness.
And we might as well start diving into games, I think, unless we want to talk about some of the interesting things that are happening this offseason as far as who's leading these teams. We got quite a coaching carousel going on right now
Yeah.
in the league. So I think we'll dive into that right now, as we've already had a couple things popping up. Even today, some news has been coming out. Earlier today, I was taking a look, and it's looking like Richie Bisaccia might not be coming back to the Raiders. That is the rumor. That's what it's looking. Josh McDaniels is getting a lot of interest from that crew. So that it's early indications are that they might be looking that way. I know me and you hate it, right?
Oh, such a bad decision. This guy comes in the worst possible situation. The last coach got fired not because of his merits, but because of a bullshit email scandal that's going on. Partially because of his merits too, let's face it. He
Yeah,
wasn't
I mean,
doing great. But like he did that's not why he got fired. He got fired because of the whole email thing that was happening. Immediately, upon hire, loses his deep threat option and second best wide receiver, I think you could argue, in Henry Ruggs, right? After he has a vehicular homicide DUI on his name. Loses one of his best secondary options in Damon Arnett because he's threatening dudes over the internet with a gun. Has two more DUI incidents over the course of the season. Still manages to take this team made of parts that are just pulled together from whatever they can scrounge, gets them into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They have a hell of a fight in a playoff game with the Bengals, who we just mentioned, then go on and beat the number 1 seed. How does that guy not get a shot next year?
Yeah, it's very surprising. I would have heavily considered for him to just kind of, it seems like, just kind of push aside now at this point. I understand. I guess you got to do your full thing. You got to, if you really, for whatever reason, your GM, your ownership, they don't feel like they could make that work long term, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like he had the guys going, coming, rallying behind him. If you get the right coordinator, coordinators in place, he's able to kind of make that thing work. That's the thing. When you're coming in as an interim coach anyways, it's not like you've had control of this operation from the get-go, right? You are having to work with what is basically being given to you. So, who knows? Bisaccia's been around for a bit, so it's not like he's, fresh blood and he didn't have, connections, that sort of thing. I wonder what kind of relationships, what kind of team he could have built up around him as far as his coaches, his assistants, to really have a good run at being a head coach, because you're just giving whatever fucking Gruden had set up for you, basically. So it's a damn shame. I guess he's looking at other special teams coordinator positions around the league. I think Bears have sniffed around early. We'll see where he lands. It would be interesting to see if he's. If he's even interested, that could be the thing too. Is self motivation on that sort of thing. I think we've maybe touched upon on this show, but the idea of being a coordinator, even at the top level, right there, it's so much different than being the head coach. Head coach, the whole roles and responsibility. Coordinators, you're still at least to a degree having that interaction with your players, really having a tangible effect on the field as far as how those guys are trained up, and even for a lot of those guys, obviously calling the plays as well. And when you become the head coach, you just become that much more separated from the players, So maybe that's in Bisaccia's interest himself. Maybe he doesn't really. He jumped in and he was willing to be the head coach. Who knows? We don't really know exactly what's going on in his head. But it seems like, to us anyways, that should have got a shot, I feel. But that's to be determined, I guess.
You hear the Texans looking at Josh McCown, who's never coached a game above high school ball in his life, and you think, why wouldn't you take a run at Rich Bisaccia if the Raiders aren't going to hire him, right? He's proven to have tangible success in the role. Even in a shortened stint as an interim coach, the shit he went through, that guy's definitely got the mental fortitude to be a head coach, right? To go through the shit he went through in Las Vegas and still get that team to the playoffs?
Yeah.
I'm shocked that I'm not hearing more about teams that don't have head coaches taking a run at him now that it sounds like the Raiders aren't going to. But you're right. It could be a personal thing.
Yeah.
Right? It could just be a thing where he took the role, he was willing to take it, did it, and didn't love it. And hey, that's cool too. Listen, some people, they have a good job that they like. They just want to keep that job. It doesn't matter if forward advancement's there. They want to keep the job that makes them happy. And if that's Rich Bisaccia's goal, shout out to Rich Bisaccia. Live your best life. But if this is anything other than that case, I think the Raiders are making a big mistake here.
Sure.
Especially for Josh McDaniels. Listen, I know there's a lot of hype around Josh McDaniels because of the Patriots thing, but Bill Belichick assistants tend to not end up being great head coaches.
It's not a big coaching tree for sure. It's not been.
No, and it's not like this is a guy who hasn't already failed as a head coach. His stint in Denver left a lot to be desired. I I don't know why everybody thinks now he'll be better, but I I don't know. I don't see it. Like it's not like being a Belichick assistant is a guaranteed path to success. As a matter of fact, it's almost a certain guaranteed path to failure as a head coach. Very few of his assistants have ever gone on to do anything decent as a head coach,
Mm.
and I don't think any of them have had really any sustained success as a head coach.
No, no,
I I
it's
don't see it.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's a discussion definitely that's warranted. As far as yeah, that coaching tree, it just hasn't worked. And if you're trying to
Yep.
do the same thing that Belichick's doing, and you're trying to take that and move it somewhere else, um, you're if you're going into a head coaching spot, you're usually going into kind of a losing head coaching spot. And if you're going with that style of coaching and that's how you're going to run your operation, you got to turn that around and start winning. And unfortunately, none of these guys have really gotten that consistently going. I think it's also interesting. Something to bring up is that I think obviously you've already had a couple teams that have chosen their head coaches, but I think there are a couple teams that are waiting for the teams that are still in the playoffs right now, still making the run at the Super Bowl. Obviously, we've talked about D'Amico Ryans for the Niners, their offensive Mike McDaniel. Both their coordinators are of interest. I know Bellamy, I want to say, for the Chiefs, I believe, has always been he's been brought up actually for the last couple of years, I believe, in head coaching talks. So there's a couple guys still in play that are actually active right now. So we'll see where that falls, especially for a team like the Raiders that really I would imagine is looking if you're not going with Bisaccia here, you're trying to get someone yeah, I
With
suppose
pedigree, some kind of winning.
yeah
Here's the
yeah
thing. To the teams that have hired and the Raiders who look like they really like Josh McDaniels, you better have contacted Brian Flores, right? There's not going to be a better coaching option out there than Brian Flores this year. I don't think. It's certainly hard to imagine you got a guy coming off of back-to-back winning seasons with a franchise that never wins anything. It's just going to fall into your lap anywhere else.
yeah.
I know I've heard about him around the Giants. I know the Saints are looking to interview him.
People are
If you
floating like Jim Harbaugh and stuff out there again. I don't know about that. And
wary,
I don't think he'll leave either. I think he's just fine staying in college for right now. But
I don't know about that. So Michigan's in a very interesting spot
they're
as a
not. Yeah,
program.
they're not doing so hot, right?
Like they made the playoffs this
Yeah,
year and they finally beat Ohio State, but that's with a really large class of seniors that are about to go out.
yeah.
And I believe they had the 37th ranked class coming in. So it's not like they brought in an elite class. Harbaugh's recruiting has been
Left a lot to be desired.
yeah, it's been very questionable at Michigan. He hasn't brought in a lot of true
Yeah,
studs that have really turned the team around at
yeah.
Michigan, and he's washed as in the Big Ten. Penn State and Ohio State and Iowa have constantly churned out these great recruiting classes and have turned it into wins. Michigan hasn't really done that to the same extent. And I do wonder if maybe Harbaugh could be tempted back to the NFL if the right job offer was there, obviously. Because I wonder the state of Michigan going forward.
To just kind of hit on, I would say, uh, yeah, yeah, the whole Michigan situation that's another thing. We'll see how that ends up for him. But I want to take a look at the two guys that have you kind of mentioned the teams that
Yeah.
have decided. So we have the Chicago Bears and they have settled on Matt Eberflus, former defensive coordinator for the Colts. Denver Broncos go with Nate Hackett, former offensive coordinator for the Packers. And the one I want to kind of hit on just a little bit because this has been the big story. It's going to be the big story of the offseason until he makes a decision is what is going to happen with the Packers, specifically Aaron Rodgers, Devontae, their cap issues, that sort of thing. They're deep in that hole as well. What's that team going to look like? Nate Hackett, obviously being the offensive coordinator for the Packers, like that's that's going to carry some weight. So, and the Broncos, if there was one thing they needed to do, is they needed to get that offense right. That defense was too damn good for them to be as bad as they were record wise by the end of it. Right?
Yep.
If they just had a mediocre, competent offense, they would have been easily in the playoffs. But they had much less than that. So this will be an interesting play for them. It will be interesting for the Packers too going forward if that's going to be any more desirable of a situation for a guy like Rodgers, because he really liked Hackett at that coordinator position. So,
and it's not like this comes out of left field. Nate Hackett's been a guy who's been floated around for coaching jobs for years now. This is a guy who got the Jaguars offense to the playoffs as a strong offense with Blake Bortles as the quarterback. This is a guy who has had proven success as an offensive coordinator and a quarterback's coach throughout the NFL. He's been highly coveted for years. Every season, it felt like going into the offseason, Nate Hackett's name was floated around as the head coach of this team or that team. Broncos seem like a good spot for him. It's a team that needs an offensive revamp. Right, that offense was terrible this year. They could use a revamp, especially if he can seduce Rodgers to Denver. That automatically improves your offense. Beyond that, this is a guy who's had success turning around offenses. That Jaguars offense before Nate Hackett was garbage. He turned them into a top half offense for a little bit and got them to the playoffs. Nearly got them to a Super Bowl. Yeah. Let's not forget, Blake Bortles outplayed Tom Brady in a championship game. We all forget that, but that was a thing. Yeah. This is a guy who's had success being an offensive coordinator, being a bit of an offensive guru. He's known for doing good things with quarterbacks. If you can't get Rodgers, maybe you can draft a quarterback who under Nate Hackett can grow with him, right? That could be another option here. They have a pretty decent draft pick at 9. I doubt there's going to be 10? 9 or 10. Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The only team ahead of them who is likely to take a quarterback is Atlanta, the pick before. And even then, I'm not sold Atlanta takes a quarterback. So they got the pick of the litter as far as quarterback goes, whether it's Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral or probably not Sam Howell, but he does have a really great mustache. Doesn't matter who it is. If that's your guy, you have a chance to grab. So this could be a very interesting situation for Nate Hackett, where he gets a chance to grab his quarterback, the one that he feels like fits his coaching style the best.
Right.
Build his team around that guy, and really, if the Broncos are willing to give him a couple years, really build this team going forward. That could be another option. However, all this changes if you get Aaron Rodgers, because then you're just in win now mode. But I do think there's more to this signing than just Aaron Rodgers. This is a guy, like I said, who's been bandied around for years as a head coach. He seems like the right kind of guy to step into this Broncos situation. An offense-first guy who has had success building up teams with below-average offenses and making them pretty good. He might be the right guy for this situation. So I think there's more to this than just Rodgers. I think the Rodgers situation certainly helps, but I do think there's more to Nate Hackett than just they hired him to get Aaron Rodgers. I think there's a little bit more to this than that.
No, I don't think it was even necessarily to do that. It's just an interesting little connection.
The connection's certainly interesting for sure.
And yeah, it can't make Rodgers, and really Rodgers, therefore Devontae Adams' desire to be in Green Bay any better by losing the coordinator they like, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, taking a look down, I mean, a lot of teams still to be decided. Obviously, we still are looking for coaches for the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Miami Dolphins, Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints, and New York Giants. Obviously, some of these are like, it's kind of interesting. Like, New Orleans Saints seems like how they played this last season, like a great job. But then you see that there's $70 million in the hole on cap, and that's why Sean Payton probably left there. That's going to be a tough route for anybody to go in, because that team is not going to look at all like it did this season. Minnesota Vikings. A lot of names out there as far as who is potentially going there. Miami Dolphins, that has to look kind of attractive because that looked like a playoff team until they just weren't, right?
I would argue the Dolphins might not be as attractive as you think. This is a team that's got a quick firing gun on coaches. If you're going to fire a guy like Brian Flores,
Sure.
who seemed to have
Right.
been turning the apple
Right.
card on that team, if you're a coach going to Miami, you got to understand, you go 6 and 10, 11 this year, 7 and 10, you might very well be out, right?
I don't, but the whole thing with Miami and what we heard about afterward is the
The
GM
power struggle.
and Flores. So it's kind of one of those things. Results are going to matter for that, and if you're losing, that's definitely not as good as if you're winning. But I think that's also the thing. If whoever they are trying to bring in as coach works with the GM, it seems like they're gonna go with the GM side on this thing if it comes to those terms again. So yeah, we'll see what they go who they go for. A couple interesting. They're one of those teams looking at Mike McDaniel. They were looking at Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn going to be staying in Dallas, which probably saves Mike McCarthy's ass for another season. That's gonna be Big Mike getting another run in Dallas. How do you like that, dude? I can't.
I hope they enjoy their first round exit next year.
I mean,
That's all I'll say about that.
yeah.
Mike McCarthy cannot coach.
No.
Someday people will learn this. Until that day comes, he will continue to be carried by ungodly amounts of quarterback talent and continue to underachieve.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I want to touch on the Packers here for a second because I think the Packers as an organization got to look at the last 20 to 30 years as complete failure. They went from Bart Starr to Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers and won 2 Super Bowls in that time. That's elite quarterback to elite quarterback to elite quarterback. Won twice.
Yeah.
No breaks in between there. Just elite quarterback play that whole way through. That tenure, that stretch there, is failure. There is no team that can say they went through that same stretch with that level of quarterback play consistently and managed to not really do much with it.
Well, they're a great example, right? Of football is a true team game in a lot of aspects.
Oh, yeah.
And while the quarterback is your most important player, most likely on your team, and you could have a dominant player at that position, if you are failing from a organizational standpoint to put together a team around him, then it's bound to happen. You all of a sudden have a 10-point game in the divisional round at home. Shit happens sometimes. It just doesn't all click. I mean, it's hard to say failure because you at least won a couple championships in there, but like,
I get that it's not total failure, but like you got to look at that time frame and go, we never for one season didn't have elite quarterback play on this team.
Right.
How did we not run some shit? Right? How did we not go on a Patriots level run?
Yeah, but that's the Pats are the Pats. That's a run that that's going to be unheard of. I don't know if you're going to see anything like that ever again, really.
In that time that I mentioned,
right,
the Cowboys, Steelers, and Patriots won more Super Bowls.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Like that, you went that amount of time with elite quarterback play. And you could only get 2? Yeah. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty surprising. I think it's something to where, it is going to be tough. It's just going to be tough in general to win a Super Bowl. I mean, you're dealing with other professional teams there. The Pats are the only ones that really went on this run to where, like, this stuff was inevitable. And, like, the Packers are running into potentially, I mean, their stumbles in the playoffs, they had some bad stumbles too. They also ran some walls, um,
Yeah.
namely those Niner defensive teams with Kaepernick and shit. And we all fucking know like there was some interesting things at play there. It's like that motherfucker's running for 200 yards on you. Yeah, you're getting blown up. Like they've had just some epic collapses. Uh, when it comes to getting to the playoffs. They do great in the regular season. They actually make it there, but then, a lot of falling apart when it comes to the playoffs. So I would, yeah, I mean,
No,
it's disappointing. I wouldn't say a
um,
failure. It's disappointing for sure to
I,
only get two.
that's
Yeah,
fair. Maybe failure was a bit harsh. Maybe disappointment is better.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um, a large portion of that has to fall on Mike McCarthy.
Hmm.
He was the coach there for 13 seasons.
Yeah.
Through the last half of Brett Favre's run and then to 2018. I think he gets hired there in 2004, 2005, something like that. And stays there, I think, till 2018.
It's an interesting call they went with because this is the thing with Mike McCarthy. He comes from um, that coaching tree that a lot of folks were with the Niners back then, and Mike McCarthy was part of that squad. That when Aaron Rodgers was getting drafted, I believe this was the 06-07 draft. I want to say,
Oh,
um,
five.
'05. Wow, jeez, okay, a little off, but just a year. But in that draft, the Niners at that time had Mike McCarthy was, I believe, their quarterbacks coach for the Niners.
Yes, that is correct.
Therefore, directly responsible had to be in the ear of the coach to who they were going to pick. They went with Alex Smith. And we all know the early run for Alex Smith was not a pretty one for sure, but A-Rod dropped like a rock, right, to the deep 20s when he was looking at a top pick in the draft.
I do think it's interesting, though, that he immediately leaves San Francisco to become the head coach of the Packers.
Yes.
I I wonder if maybe McCarthy was one of the people on the Rodgers bandwagon and got outvoted.
Could be, or it could have been that it's a really bad mistake by
Yeah,
ownership, and they pick up a guy that passed on Rodgers. And
that could be it too.
I don't think Rodgers forgot about it, honestly.
There's no love lost between the two. You can tell
They
as much.
didn't, yeah. They weren't.
Like, even in the I remember watching the Pat McAfee show interview when they talked a little bit about Mike McCarthy, and he kind of gave like a glancing, yeah, I wish him the best, but that was it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was quick to change that subject. You can tell there's not a lot of love lost between the two. And I can't I get it if I'm Rodgers, right? Like, this guy was the head coach for you for 10 years. If you're correct, was a part of the reason the team that you loved as a kid didn't draft you. Number one overall, and you
Yeah.
fell to 25 or whatever the heck it was. Comes in. There was a lot of headbutting between the two about who gets to call plays. I remember that. I remember that for sure. Because Mike McCarthy was very adamant about calling plays in Green Bay. And I remember there was a lot of headbutting between him and Aaron Rodgers about what plays were being called. That was a thing that came out quite a few times after playoff games. Um,
Yeah.
and I can understand the frustration if you feel like
Yeah.
this coach was the guy who was holding your team back.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, watching his tenure in Dallas, he might have a point. Mike McCarthy's play calling is bizarre. And I know a lot of people are quick to go, Kellen Moore calls the plays. Yeah, but they got to run through Big Mike.
Yeah.
Big Mike ain't out here letting Kellen Moore call whatever the hell he wants. He's out there going, whoa. If the play calling were this bad and Mike McCarthy didn't like it, he'd have changed it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing about being the head coach is you have that ability. Because the Cowboys' play calling this whole season was awful. Baffling. I know a lot of people look back to the quarterback sneak. All season you could go through the season and find 5 or 6 plays throughout the course of the game and go, why the fuck did you call that?
Yeah.
right? Every game. And if you're the head coach and your play calling's that bad, you would think you would change it.
Well, I mean, Big Mike's gonna get another shot over there, so we'll see. We'll see with Dallas. It's a crazy scenario for him because it feels like a team that absolutely can go, but they're gonna have that guy as your head coach for another year. I mean,
Player for player, that is the most talented offense in the NFC on paper.
right.
Just on paper,
Yeah.
player for player. I don't think there's any team more talented than the Cowboys on offense. The only one you can maybe argue is the Rams.
Yeah.
Right? With that has a receiving core that deep, but the Rams don't have the running back situation that the Cowboys have.
Yeah.
Right? And I would probably argue I'd take Dak Prescott over Matt Stafford. That one's a little bit close, but they're I mean, either way you look at it, they both have very great quarterbacks. They both have unbelievable receiving cores. Dallas has a better running back situation. Right? I think if you go through every NFC team, you could probably find a place where Dallas is superior than them on offense. Their defense is nothing to scoff at. It's not outstanding, but that offense should be able to outscore whatever defensive problems you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, it's maybe it's just a little bit of stubbornness. I think the call early on, it seemed like through the season, and not really like trying to work Zeke in more and more, and not really going to Pollard when Zeke wasn't effective. Stuff like that. There were times when Dak and stuff, they ended up being the number one offense, but there were times when that offense looked weirdly stagnant.
Do you remember what was it Denver they played? Where they dropped down 30-0 and then scored a couple of garbage time touchdowns to make it
Yeah, they had a bad game against Denver, yeah.
That was maybe the worst offensive game I've ever seen a very good offense play.
Right.
Nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And that game, for some reason, stuck in my head so clearly throughout this season as, like, this is the coaching problem. You just let things, like, it's the same problem they had in the NFC Championship game. They just let the problem sit there and fester until it's too late. Right? Like, early in that NFC Championship game, it was pretty clear that they were going to struggle to move the offense the way they were running it. Right? They had to change some stuff up. You had to get Pollard more involved because Zeke wasn't really running.
Are you talking the divisional, you mean?
Yeah. Right? Because Zeke wasn't really running the way you'd want. You would figure they'd try to work in a little bit of short passing game, right? Try to get some screens going, try to get some slants going, get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. You got like 3 or 4 wide receivers, all of whom can make big plays. Kind of maybe run your offense similar to the way San Francisco does, right? Short passing, run the ball, get the ball into our playmakers' hands and let them make plays, right? It felt like every 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 was a 15, 20-yard pass. That was incomplete.
That was the thing, is what would happen often was it was on first or second down, a run would be in there, and it wouldn't be an effective run. On first or second down, alternatively, would be a dig route for 5-6 yards. It would be a 3rd and 5, and then, they would go deep.
20-yard pass, incomplete.
A lot of drives ended like that. A lot of 3-and-outs for that team in that game, and due to just that. Yeah.
And then by the time the offense starts clicking, right, by the time everything starts to get moving, they actually start to move the ball in the fourth quarter. The San Francisco defense looked like they started to get a little bit tired. Too late. You're already down by 24, and now you're essentially having to score on every drive, or you're screwed. They couldn't do it.
And, granted, tried their damnedest, but and then,
they came
all
close.
the things we've already talked about as far as them slipping up.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to...
that was my point. It's just like, a team that's coached like that is never going to win anything. Ever.
Yeah.
So either Mike McCarthy changes his ways this offseason, somehow finds God, and God tells him, listen, maybe try to simplify this offense a little bit, or first round exit again. They're too talented to miss the playoffs, but they're certainly not going far in it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you got to imagine if they don't do something next season with it. I mean, how does Jerry keep him around? I can't imagine he will.
They mentioned it
We'll see
when
with
we were
Sean.
talking about the Cowboys, though.
Yeah,
He kept Jason Garrett around for
right.
like 6 years or whatever the heck it was when that wasn't working.
But we'll see what Sean Payton decides to do. I know Jerry's always liked Sean Payton, so that's going to be another interesting thing, kind of down the line for them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just going to be it. One thing I do want to correct: I said McCarthy was the quarterback coach in '05. No, he was the OC actually for Mike Nolan.
Ah,
So even more so, kind of
even more, I would say.
involved in that one. So yeah, McCarthy kind of directly in there.
God, I have trouble
On that
believing your
decision.
OC would come to you saying draft somebody and you would go, "Nah, we're gonna draft the other guy." So,
Nah, nah.
uh,
Um,
maybe my story about Mike McCarthy's looking a little bit less good.
man, I mean, it's yeah, he's got to get it right. He's got to see just a. He just needs to go to like some I've been to like these business seminars and stuff. They really teach you how to organize and like maintain your time. He needs a planner. He needs a little daily planner. Hey, remember within 2 minutes here, you see the 2 on the clock. You got to start calling things in a certain
You
way.
know, you know what offense I really think the Cowboys could look at and go, "That's something we could emulate," is the late '90s, early 2000s Rams offense, the greatest show on turf. Right? They had all those big plays that Mike McCarthy loves to run in their playbook, but they didn't run them every third down. They didn't run them every play. A lot of their plays were designed to get the ball into Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce's hands, right? Kurt Warner was a great quarterback who knew exactly what he had to do,
Yeah.
right? On 2nd and 10, they'd throw the short little slant to Isaac Bruce because, yeah, either you're getting 5 yards or you're getting 50 because Isaac Bruce was a freak and Torrey Holt was a freak, right? That could be the kind of offense the Cowboys could look at and maybe go, okay, maybe this is something we can start to implement because they have that talent on the outside. And they have a running back who, no, Zeke is not Marshall Faulk, but he can run like Marshall Faulk. They have a similar running profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Zeke is a damn talented running back. I think he was just hobbled. They just need to lean more on the great other back that they have. You know, they are in that rare situation where you could really
You have
lean
two of
on
them.
your backup. You know, Pollard could handle the rock, and he could probably, you maybe don't give him a crazy workload during that time, but I mean, what would be the harm in giving a guy like Pollard between maybe some catches and some runs, something like 20 touches a game? I think you're doing pretty goddamn good in that situation.
You know what
But
the really scary thing about the Pollard Zeke combination is? They're different running backs.
yeah, sure,
Pollard is a little bit faster, a little bit more elusive. Zeke's gonna hit you hard, and he's hard to bring down on that first contact.
yeah,
You have the perfect combination of running backs,
yeah.
right?
You got the thunder and lightning, exactly.
You got the thunder and
Yeah,
lightning.
you got to think about
I
it. Shake and bake.
uh,
Yeah,
I look at that offense and go, man, you can't do that.
I think it's kind of one of those things where in I think you can look on paper and you could even see stats throughout a season. But when it really comes down to like certain situational football, that's where certain teams struggle. I think a team like Dallas, as good as their offense was, that sort of thing, when they really need to perform and like really step up in playoff vital situations, they faltered. And a team like the Niners, that offense doesn't look like that a decent amount of the time. They have all of a sudden, hey, shit, we need to get this third down. We need to get this 2 minute drill like drive going, or we need to kill a bunch of clock here. They could get that turned on just within that little, those moments. And that's a hell of a thing when you have the ability to flip it on. I think KC
Yeah.
is one of those rare teams that has a consistent offense that they can put out. But then when they extra need to kick it in like an overtime against the Buffalo Bills, bam, 4 plays later, and that game's
There's a
fucking
fourth gear
over.
to the there's a
like,
fourth gear to the KC
Jesus.
offense. Not a lot of offenses have that. Honestly, I would argue there's a fourth gear to the Bills offense too after watching that game.
Right.
Like the biggest You know what stopped the Bills' offense last
Yeah.
week? The overtime rules.
Yeah.
That's what stopped the Bills' offense
Well,
last week. It wasn't Casey's defense.
let's jump into it right now because we're already
Yeah.
starting to talk about it. And I was thinking we were just gonna run this in order, but that was a highlight game, and I think there's no fault in talking about the last game of the weekend
Maybe the
first.
maybe the best playoff game I've ever seen.
That,
I'd have
yeah.
to go back through history in my head and really break it down, but man, I'd gladly throw that game up there with like Music City Miracle and all those classics. That game's right up there with it. What a game that was, man.
Yeah, just a slugfest for the most part. And you have in the late third, you have Casey up by 9, but that was the only time when it seemed like a team really pulled away. Otherwise, they were really just kind of going blow for blow
Yeah.
with those offenses on fire. I mean, I think obviously the main thing everybody's looked to, and that was the big discussion afterward, is the OT rules. It's like, motherfuckers, we've had these OT rules for a while. Now we're complaining about this shit. But interesting stats that do come up as far as playoff overtime games. If you win the coin toss, it's like drastic, even though that's a pretty small sample size. I think it's like 10 games since they
And
implemented
games,
the rules.
well, 11 now, 10
Yeah,
and 1.
that's pretty tiny sample size,
Yeah.
honestly. I would imagine that would flex down quite a bit. I could see easily 60-70%, but like realistically, like I mean, we're in a pretty offensive league now, but that Buffalo defense has every right to be able to like they were a great defense. They were the best defense in the league, and
Yes.
they just obviously, all the credit to Casey's offense and them moving it down the field and just fucking lighting them up. But I mean, that's a Buffalo defense that can get there too, and it's a damn shame that it comes down to it. Buffalo doesn't get to run their offense out there, but I mean, my feeling is that's kind of just the breaks. I mean, it sucks. You just need that bend don't break
Yeah.
sort of thing. Buffalo needed to find a way to just get them stopped somehow, some way, not let them get an easy touchdown like that, but they just picked them apart.
Yeah, I think you saw the remnants of both defenses missing their best player, right?
Right.
Tyrann Mathieu, obviously, Honey Badger goes out with that concussion.
Yeah.
Early in the game.
Yeah.
And the Bills, I mentioned it last week. The reason I was worried about the Bills is they were missing Tre'Davious White.
Right.
He's the only guy on that team who had a chance of covering Tyreek Hill. And we saw it a couple times, man. Tyreek Hill would get the ball and he'd be gone. They didn't have a cornerback who could match that, right? And that's why you have elite shutdown corners, Jalen Ramsey's, Tre'Davious White's, right? That's why you pay the big bucks for guys like that. That's a guy who could have made a difference. On the other side, Tyrann Mathieu obviously gets hurt in the first half, and the Bills' offense just constantly. Gabriel Davis, they didn't have it. It felt like every time there needed to be safety help, it was not there for him.
Well,
right?
It seems like what they did was like, because you still have Stephon Diggs out on the field there, right? For the Bills. So maybe there was just like, okay, we don't have our best guy. We have to, bracket whatever. We got to shade our coverage over towards Stephon Diggs. We're not going to let him beat us. And then Gabriel Davis goes off for over 200 yards and 4 fucking tutties. Like, Jesus.
What a game he had. It sucks that one of those teams had to lose that game, and that is not the AFC Championship game. Like, it really does, because that did feel like the two best teams in the AFC. And I might be spoiling my pick a little bit for the AFC Championship game here, but that did just feel like the two best teams in the AFC. And that's not a disrespect to the Cincinnati Bengals, who had a hell of a season, have beaten the Chiefs already this year, and played a great game last week. But man, those two teams just felt next level to everybody else in the AFC. What a game that was. I feel for Josh Allen, right? That's got to suck as the quarterback. You do everything possible. 329, 4 touchdowns, no picks. He threw the ball about as well as you could have asked anybody to throw the ball in that game. And he lost the game without getting a chance to touch the ball in overtime. That sucks.
Right.
You know who knows how bad that sucks? Patrick Mahomes, because that happened to him a few years ago.
Right.
Shame that one of those teams had to lose that game. Uh, I am on the side of I would like to see the overtime rules amended, only because I wanted to see more of that game. I didn't want that game to end. Let's just keep it going, man. Rack it up, baby.
Yeah.
Um, it sucks. I get the argument that football is a team sport, and if you want the ball back, your defense should be able to do it.
Yeah.
Right? All your defense has to do there is not give up a touchdown. But at that point, there was what 25 points in the last minute and 57 seconds or something like that. Those two defenses were dead. Whoever won that coin toss was going to win that game.
Yeah.
It was always that simple.
I think it's just, and McDermott over there in Buffalo, obviously, they did a phenomenal job throughout the season. Obviously this might be more defensive coordinator. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's a combination of them because I think McDermott is pretty involved in the defense for the Bills.
I would imagine. I think he's a defensive guy, right?
It's that in combination with the kickoff, the way they did it. It's like 17 seconds is fucking nothing. Like that could have been even less too if they really they go squib or they just make them return that, take an extra 5 seconds. Like you don't have enough time to get 2 plays off, that sort of thing. That was as little time as they had. Like if they had some way to do that, and then on the defensive side of the ball, just the way they just didn't play them, like they had 2 timeouts. Yeah. Like they had 2, so you can't really like just try to push to the middle and keep them in the middle.
You can't play full prevent like the way they did, where you just guard sidelines, guard 30 yards downfield, and let them get everything underneath. They had enough timeouts to make that work.
Yeah.
And by the way, they also have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, who, if you give them that much room, will take a mile out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'll take 5-10 yard gains and turn them into 20-30 yard gains if you're gonna let them just catch the ball like that. I will say about the squib kick thing, because I did hear the squib kick argument. You would be giving them less time, but they'd probably be starting at a better field position. So it's one of those catch-22s, right? They kicked it out the back of the end zone, so they're starting at the 20. You squib there's a good chance the Chiefs are starting at the 35-40.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one of those catch-22s where, yeah, you'd take a few seconds off the clock, but you'd also give them less of a field that they would need to travel. Hard to say which one's right or wrong there. I don't think the long kickoff was the problem. I agree with you. The way they defended that last 13 seconds was not great. I think you got to play that straight up, right? Just straight up defense like you would any other time. Maybe not full press, but certainly play your defense, right? Don't go full sidelines and prevent with 13 seconds left with 2 timeouts. They're going to move the ball. They're going to be able to move the ball up the field, especially when they only need a field goal. They didn't need a touchdown there. So I didn't love the defensive play calling, but on the squib kick versus regular kickoff thing, there's arguments and counter arguments both ways. I don't think there was a right or wrong answer to that one. But yeah, it's hard for me to really go after the Bills defense too much because they built their defense around having Tre'Davious White. Right, that defense is built around having a shutdown corner to shut down their main guy, and then everybody else kind of plays a role somewhere else. And when you lose that main guy who your defense is built around, it's gonna be hard to replace that. It's no different than if if they lost Josh Allen at quarterback, their offense is gonna be significantly worse because they don't have Josh Allen. Right? It's the way that the Bills have built their defense. Is Tre'Davious White is the key cog, and when they lost him, that defense was always going to hurt a little bit. Maybe not necessarily in games where teams don't have a star man, but against the Chiefs, against Tyreek Hill, that was always going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. There's no doubt you're gonna take some hurt losing White like that. I think that it was very conceptual though, as far as that stumble toward the end.
No, that I agree with.
And yeah, if you're going to, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. It's a pretty damn situation if things can go kind of awry, I suppose, if you have a guy like Tyreek on there. If they happen to really like it Casey, I think, structured their offense basically in that situation exactly to what they were being given from Buffalo. Because I guess the threat is, okay, you just don't let Tyreek beat you deep. That's kind of the only thing you're really going for on that. And I suppose you take it away. And maybe if Buffalo does play a little bit more of a normal kind of zone, then maybe they do find him for a seam and you lose it in a touchdown in the final seconds of regulation. I guess that's the fear there, but I think just a misstep.
Even then, just go to like a standard cover 3 or something like that, and you're probably not going to get beat over the top.
Yeah, I gotta and where's I like. Yeah, I like playing pretty traditional defense. Like, if you just get a pass rush there and stuff like that, you hope that you just get to them before a crazy down the field play could even develop. But
like I said, if you're that worried about him going over the top, you can just go with a cover 3, right? It's going to leave a little bit open underneath, but not in the same way that a full prevent would, right? And that cover 3 is going to make sure that Tyreek Hill doesn't beat you over the top because there's always going to be safety help, no matter where on the field it is. That would be the one thing I'd say, right? Is obviously in that situation, you can go conservative without going full conservative, right? Play a standard defense, maybe with a cover 3 instead of a cover 2, and then you're not as worried about getting beat over the top. You force them to 5-10 yard routes. You keep them under control. Instead, they go full prevent. Tyreek Hill gets like 25 on that first play. By the way, well drawn up play. The defense takes a lot of flack for what happened, and probably deservedly so. But I love the play that KC drew up on that first down, where they get Tyreek Hill directly in behind. I think it was Kelsey and Mecole Hardman. And we're both like right ahead of them to just like steamroll guys forward, right? And it's a well conceptualized play when you recognize the defense that's going on.
Yeah.
Right? You get 2 blockers right in front of your fastest dude, let them just clear a path, you get an easy 25 yards, right? When the second they saw that defense, they drew up the perfect play for that time, and that's why the Chiefs are the Chiefs, right? That's why this is going to be their 4th consecutive AFC Championship game. You give them an inch, they'll take it a mile.
Yeah. I mean, something, I would say at the beginning of the season, we weren't, not to be expected. This wasn't looking like the same old Chiefs team. This O-line started to figure it out, get together. Mahomes started getting that time again.
Yep.
Got a lot of confidence going again, and they're just slinging it. So that offense, looking as good as it has in any of the recent years, and it's gonna
game for the Bills.
Crazy.
Game for the Bills.
Yeah, gonna be a crazy game.
By the way, shouts out to Chiefs fans again. Bills Mafia tends to be a cool fan base. Chiefs fans donated, I believe, over $100,000 in donations to the Buffalo Children's Hospital in $13 increments for Patrick Mahomes' number. If you're going to troll, do some good with it. So shouts out to them. That's the kind of trolling I'm all for, right? If you can troll a team and do some good for the world with it, shouts out to Chiefs fans. I just wanted to throw that one out there because I saw that earlier and I was like, that's the kind of trolling I'm a big fan of.
I think it was for the 13 seconds left on the clock, but
maybe it was the 13 seconds on the clock.
I think it was that, but and that's kind of been
Bills Mafia have done that for years now. Obviously, with the Tre'Davious White thing, where they donated in Tre'Davious White's number to a food bank in his hometown.
Right. Yeah.
Chiefs doing it back to the Bills. That's the kind of trolling I'm there for.
Yeah. Always good to help out the people for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to a team that kind of gave plenty of charity, I would say, as far as opportunities and really a season just kind of gone by. We'll go to the first game of the weekend. Actually, we'll kind of take it back up to the top, and we'll take a look. I mean, Cincinnati Bengals go into Tennessee and take down the Titans. In you look at that score. If you watch it all, pretty goddamn ugly kind of battle there. I mean, obviously the touchdowns not really coming around. A game, honestly, that the Bengals could have won this by a lot more. Derrick Henry, unfortunately, just not able to come back into form. That offense just couldn't get it going, and obviously you take a look at Tannehill's 3 picks there. That's not going to get it done either. Just a very, very strange game. But Tennessee was still in there. They actually, having it tied up at 16 late in the third there, and actually at one point, I believe having a real opportunity to take a win in this game at one point. But yeah,
Tannehill threw a pick.
Yep, Tannehill pick, and a Cincinnati team that they offensively were able to move the ball down the field, but a lot of field goals, and you gotta. They're a little fortunate that they ran into interception after interception that was being thrown by Tannehill there, because their offense just could not really take advantage the way you would have expected off of as many opportunities they had.
I will say I thought Burrow played a pretty good game for the most part. I know the 0 touchdowns, 1 interception stands out, but 28 of 37 for 348. You'll take that every day. Both teams' running backs were pretty average, right? Joe Mixon was okay, 14 for 54 and a touchdown. Derrick Henry, I think, 20 for 62 and a touchdown. Yeah. Pretty average days, right? Not what you'd expect out of Derrick Henry, but remember, he hasn't played a game in 2 months and is coming back off of an injury that a lot of people thought ended his season. So maybe a little bit unfair to expect regular old Derrick Henry to just come back in the playoffs there. Ryan Tannehill is garbage. He does this all the time. He did this when Henry went down hurt. And when you put the game in Ryan Tannehill's hands, you are asking to lose. I know a lot of Tennessee fans are going to be quick to point out, yeah, but 2 of those interceptions were tipped. Yeah, but you watch them. Both of the interceptions that were tipped were thrown way behind the receiver. The receiver reaches back to try to bring it in. It gets tipped up and picked.
Yeah. It's
not like they were good throws that the receivers were dropping. They're bad throws that the receivers are trying to bail them out of. He does this every time.
Yeah.
Right? Every time you put the game in Ryan Tannehill's hands, you're asking to lose.
This is kind of the interesting thing. Is like absolutely. I completely agree with the pick on that. It's crazy to where, like, because those can be egregious. Like, if you're a receiver, I don't know. I think back, there was he did throw great the touchdown, the one touchdown that he did throw, the beauty to AJ Brown, where AJ Brown's on the far sideline. It's turning around. He just does this like little cradle one hand catch. It's a beautiful ball. If you don't remember it, take a look at that. Beautiful. Like, I was like, holy shit, Ryan Tannehill, he's fitting it in a spot. That's a beautiful fucking catch.
Unbelievable. And again,
but it's
literally the perfect throw. You cannot throw that ball any better. You put it to the spot where only your guy can catch it.
Yeah, it wasn't like the typical high one though. He caught it
nice
mid. It was like, and it was back shoulder, but I think the misses he had, it's those open into the field. I think one was like kind of on a little bit of a comeback route, another one like on a crossing, that sort of thing. Yeah. It's very much a timing route. I think while the AJ Brown one is more like you kind of watch your guy run out. If he's open, you throw it out there, put it to his spot. I think that's the thing with Tannehill, oddly enough. It's like things that really kind of require like bop, 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 get the ball out right here because that's where the cut's happening. It seems like he's just that half step off on those throws, and that's what really burned him in this game. Cincinnati, obviously, good on them. Their DBs were they had their eyes up for that stuff. Those balls, I would say, guys like Carson Wentz this season, they had a lot of those that were going those tip drill kind of plays, and the DBs wouldn't get those for picks. Cincinnati was on point. Their guys were ready for it. Because sometimes those only count as pass deflections or just drop balls. But Cincinnati was actually able to turn them into turnovers. It is. I will kind of point back. 348 yards is pretty damn good. Burrow only having the one pick. That's kind of a shame. But that's got to be concerning for Cincinnati going forward. Is just the fact that you do move the ball really well. You get it down there and you're kicking field goals. You're kicking 4 field goals in this game.
Do that this
week. You can't be doing it. Yeah, exactly. So the red zone offense, the deep half of the other field offense, basically, when you get into the 30 or so, it can't be falling apart for you like that.
Nope.
I think they're, Joe Mixon, a decent game. They didn't actually lean on him as much as I was thinking. I thought Joe Mixon would actually get somewhere more like a 20 carry game. And then on the other side of the ball, it's really a fucking shame that they didn't go to Foreman War when Henry wasn't being as effective.
I think that really could have helped Derrick Henry. Yeah. Derrick didn't quite look like he was fully on the pace of that game, right? Yeah. Which, again, I don't know why in my head I thought it was like, I know Derrick Henry's a freak of a running back, and in my head I think that's where I went, but he's coming back off of injured reserve after missing the last 7 games, I think, and coming into the AFC Divisional Round.
Yeah.
This isn't some random game in weeks 14 or 15 that doesn't mean anything where you can get some meaningful touches.
Yeah.
It was always going to be a bit of a difficult game for him, I think. And I think you really could have used Deontay Foreman, who ran the ball very well at the end of the season and ran the ball pretty well on the 4 touches he got in this game.
Yeah. I mean,
really could have used him to get Derrick Henry's timing back, right? This team needs to be run heavy. It needs to be. You can't be letting Tannehill throw the ball in many situations, right? It's when Tannehill's throwing, it's got to be like, I don't want to say minimal, right? Because you got to keep defenses honest, but I don't think you want to be put in situations where Tannehill has to throw the ball. I think you want Tannehill throwing the ball when defenses think the run could be coming.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a Tennessee offense ran in a somewhat, or I would say, pretty similar style to what the Niners have to operate on. If you're not getting the running game going, you can't become one-dimensional. No. Not at all. At times, Tannehill and a quarterback, in that situation, in that style of offense, you can have those games, those rare games where you go off for 3+, 2-3 tutties, something like that, and hopefully keep it clean on the interceptions. The tip drill stuff, it's kind of a shame. It happens. I mean, Burrow had a bad one. Actually, his pick, take a look at it. His was right out of the hands of Perrine, I think his name is. The back. Yeah,
Perrine.
Perrine, thank you. That one is maybe a little out in front of him. Maybe you could put a little bit more of the numbers, but Jesus, that hits you right. That hits you in the hands, man. So that's really not too.
Perrine. I don't think he got another target all game.
and a great fucking pick by the DB Tennessee guy. I remember watching that, and it was very close. They're kind of fortunate that they called it an interception on the field because it was right there at that moment. Right when he gets the ball is right when the nose hits the ground. So they happen to go. Ty goes the runner in that situation, I guess.
Yeah. Really quickly before we move out of this game, sure. Tennessee picks 26th in this draft. Would you consider going quarterback to potentially look for your next guy? Do you think we've hit the point now where the Titans know Tannehill's not going to get us beyond where we're at?
I honestly don't think they will. I don't think they're
Okay.
looking at that quite yet. They might look at a guy later in the draft, perhaps, if they like a guy.
I think with this draft, when it's not that deep at quarterback,
Right.
I think you're either going early or you're not really looking at quarterback at all. There's only maybe 5 or 6 guys that you look at that you go, this is a guy who could be an NFL player going forward.
Hmm.
Right? There's not a ton of quarterbacks in this class beyond the 5 or 6 that we have mentioned that you really look at and go, if you develop him right, this is a guy who could be that. There's not that
But
this year. There's no
yeah,
Ian Book in this class.
I don't think it's going to be a priority for the Titans this year. I think they're right now because I believe Tannehill. I gotta imagine they probably have him locked up for what, another 2-3
It's something
years?
like next year's something like 40 million of dead cap if you cut him. So you're not gonna do that.
Exactly. They're not going to be able to really move that contract unless it's something crazy for maybe
Yeah.
another
Although again,
questionable
I
quarterback.
mentioned it last week. The Lions picked up Jared Goff's contract from the Rams. If
Right.
that contract can move, Titans can find some way to move Tannehill's contract if they really want.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't know. I don't know.
would
That's
you
tough.
would you be willing to give up the first rounder to do it? No, probably not, because that means you're not going to get your quarterback, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those catch-22s, right? Where if you do move Tannehill's contract, it'd probably cost you a first for a team to take that on, right? To a team that's not going to win much this year anyways, and they go, yeah, we'll take Tannehill's contract, get your first, and we'll just stockpile draft picks for next season. Tennessee's not going to be willing to do that because if they're going to move Tannehill, it's going to be because they're going to use their first to take their next quarterback. I will say, if at 26 and Malik Willis is still on the board, I would not be shocked if they take Malik Willis. That's the only one. I don't think they'd go for Pickett or anything like that, but I think Malik Willis really fits the way the Titans want to play. Right? He's a quarterback who's got a live arm, but has very live legs as well. He's the best dual threat quarterback in there. If you really want to be a run heavy offense, and I really think the Titans do, a guy like Malik Willis fits that really well. That's the only exception to that, because I do kind of agree with you, unless Malik Willis slips. Malik Willis at 26, probably. Anybody else, I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just for kind of having a real basic understanding, obviously I don't really have the depth of looking at these guys too much, but for the Tennessee, I think if I know Tannehill played badly in that game, I think
He didn't
that
play great when Henry went down. Let's be honest.
oh yeah, absolutely not. I don't know if like yeah. Moving on to somebody, especially someone drafted, if that's putting you in any better of a situation going forward, and you're not really in a rebuild right now either. You're in this weird. You just got number 1 seed in the AFC going into the playoffs here without Derrick Henry playing for a lot of that.
So
I think they got to. Yeah, sorry. I think they just have to. Maybe I see them going O-line. I see them going, trenches, something like that. I think that's kind of to your point. If this team still wants to identify as that, getting pressure on the quarterback, getting running lanes for their backs, I think that's potentially how they're going to go in what is not a really deep quarterback draft class.
No, I think my only argument for that is unless something shift around, I don't know who they can pick at 26 that's going
It'd be a reach, right? Probably,
right? Like the only person I can see as a potential option, if you maybe want to go O-line, maybe somebody who can secure that position would be Darian Kennard, who I know has been mocked around there.
Or
but
they just move out of the spot, honestly. I think they could just move out of the spot as well.
They could just fall back if they really wanted to, and maybe even pick up a roster player. I know it doesn't happen too often, but there have been situations where teams have traded that first round pick for a roster guy. We saw it obviously with the DeForest Buckner trade,
Yeah.
right? If the right trade is there for them for that first round pick for a guy that they can just add to that roster, that could be another potential option. But yeah, outside of that, like I don't really see the positional need that fits in their draft pick. So yeah, maybe a trade back or a trade out entirely. Um, I just think if Malik Willis slides down there, he's the perfect fit for what they want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think at that point you'd be hard pressed to not take him.
Right.
But that's a big if. I know a lot of people who think Malik Willis might be the first quarterback off the board. So
Yeah.
if that's the
Right.
case, then I mean,
Yeah, there you go. Shit, look.
there goes that option completely.
I think another thing to bring up with this Titans team, and granted, again, they were the first seed, so they still fucking won. They still did well,
Yeah.
despite everything here, is this team has to be looking for some depth in some areas, because they got banged up during the season. And they still got the 1 seed despite that. So I think even strong positions that they're strong at, as far as their group right now, I don't think there's crazy harm in using that late first, or if you happen to move back to an early second pick or something like that with the trade. Get yourself a
Fill out
nice
your roster.
depth
Yeah.
piece, something that you might be able to work a guy in a little bit more. I don't think there's too much harm in that, especially for a Tennessee team that is there. They're not in rebuild mode, so you not a terrible situation to get a guy that he might be on that outer fringe of being like a starter right now, and you might be able to get him like almost semi-starter reps instead of having to really fall on that guy to really play week in, week out, a lot of downs, right?
Especially if it's a guy like a Daxton Hill or something like
Right.
that, who uh bit of a smaller cornerback out of Michigan, who I think projects as a future maybe 2 cornerback, but right now coming in, you'd probably hope to use him more as a guy to play maybe against the third, fourth guy on the, maybe in your dime packages, your nickel packages kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a guy who's out there every snap. That would be fair, or even like a Kyler Gordon, somebody like that, who again, uh,
Any big ass wide receivers out there? Maybe that would be a great piece, I think,
oh,
for the Tennessee. Someone
trying
who
to
could
think
really get
here.
it even in there and do some nice run blocking for them as well. That could be a great piece for them,
So
alongside an AJ Brown, right?
this first round is so much different than last year's because there's just not a ton of wide receiver talent out there in the first round. The only one I can think of is Treylon Burks, but there's no way Burks falls past mid first round. Treylon Burks is like 6'4", 225. He would be perfect for him. But I don't see Treylon Burks falling that far. Outside of that, first round receivers I can think of, Olave is only 6 feet tall. Jamison Williams is, I believe, 6'1", 6'2", but he's more of a speed guy than he is a blocking guy. I think he only weighed in only weighed in going into the season at like 170. They say he's gained a little bit of weight, but I that guy would be Treylon Burks, but I just don't see Burks falling that far. But again,
Yeah.
if Burks falls that far, that's a very easy pick for the Titans
Or maybe they're just,
because he does fit perfectly.
or maybe they're just fucking done with Brett Kern and they go fucking punter first round. Let's go. Like who
Hey,
knows? Who knows?
there was
Maybe.
one kicker taken last season, and he just eliminated them. The dude's been automatic this year. So
Yeah.
drafting kicker in the past hasn't always been the most successful thing, but Evan McPherson's going out there saying, hey, draft more kickers, man, because
Kid's ice
everybody's
cold.
having kicker problems out there, and I ain't one of them.
That kid is fucking ice in his
Evan
veins.
McPherson doesn't give a shit what the situation is, man.
I
He
mean,
just
yeah,
doesn't care.
he did that interview on McAfee earlier this week. If you hadn't seen that, check that
Yeah.
out. He's hilarious. That was a great interview. And yeah, I mean, what a fucking win for the Bengals. I mean, we talked about before. What a fucking dream scenario. Nobody saw this shit coming. And for the Bengals, it's pretty awesome. Gotta love the underdogs coming out. They're gonna be lined up with a hell of a game against the Chiefs coming up. But like you said, this is a team they just beat. less than a month ago.
They
So we'll
did.
see coming up.
Somehow it feels like so long ago, though, with the way the Chiefs have looked the first two playoff games. It feels like it's an entirely different team. I know it's
Yeah,
only been a month, but
sure.
like, man, that Chiefs team, oh boy, you better start scoring some touchdowns. Like,
Yeah,
that's the big thing, right? Bengals got to get in the end zone. If you're settling for field goals like they were last game, you're going to get blown out of this game.
yeah. And yeah, I mean, who knows from game to game what style of game we'll get for these guys.
The
It
thing,
was a pretty decent offensive turnout for both 34-31 that previous one, so we'll see.
yep.
One game that ended up going a lot differently than how it went in the regular season when they matched up was San Francisco Green Bay. This time over in Wisconsin in a fucking blizzard, but not really a blizzard. It wasn't crazy coming down, but it looked shitty. It didn't look fun out there.
It was cold as hell
It
and
was a
windy, and that's
cold some
maybe
bitch,
worse.
frigid, just stiff. Um, that was a ugly fucking football game, but this is a little bit of the MO obviously for the Niners. I think obviously everything will be kind of lost, and both quarterbacks are going to be looked at, obviously, Rodgers and Jimmy G on that one. But defenses came out fucking playing, and
Yep.
they made those O lines look a little worse. I think for on the Niners side, I'm watching fucking Tom Compton get his ass beat all fucking day on the right tackle side, and the interior, Green Bay really able to stifle a lot of the running game that the Niners were trying. Weren't able to be effective in that regard, and you knew that was going to be something the Niners were going to do. That was how this offense was going to go, and it looked early on like Green Bay was going to get their offense going. They're going to be moving that opening drive
That
touchdown.
opening drive, they just ripped them apart.
Yeah, and we were on the call together. I'm just kind of watching
Yeah.
that with you. I'm like, yeah, shit. All right, come on, boys. Like, what can you do? Like, you just they got everything, but credit to obviously the defense. Credit to D'Amico Ryans. This is a guy that these two teams played earlier this season, and it looked like he was maybe going to hand a bunch of points and stuff over to Rodgers again. Really, made some great adjustments. Obviously, you talk about the D line really started to get home. Really got pressure with four and questionable decision making, obviously, from both quarterbacks led to a little bit of some stuff as well. And you get a fucking 13-10 game in the NFC Divisional Round, baby. But Niners move on. What were some things you were thinking about during that fiasco that was?
The first thing in my head was like, if I had told you going into that game that the Niners offense is going to score a grand total of 0 points and they will win this game, I think you'd go, what?
Well, yeah, I mean, depends on how you want to, scope
I
that.
don't count field goals as offensive points, as special teams points. I'm sorry.
I, okay, they don't even get the field goal at the end if they don't drive it down the field for
No,
it.
that's true.
You gotta move the ball, like,
I
yeah. But I hear you. I mean, they're definitely not fucking touchdowns they're putting up. That's
no.
for damn sure. They put up
Let me.
they
You
put
ask
up
any
6
offense
points.
if a field goal is an offensive point, and I think they'll tell you no.
Their offensive scoring drives were 6 points. Whether that's
Yeah.
the offense technically
Yeah.
scoring or a kicker scoring
No,
is
I know what you're
another
saying.
thing. But yes.
Both offenses look pretty bad at times, right? Like, I know Raj's numbers aren't bad, but you gotta look kind of beyond them. Boy, oh boy, you know who really stood out to me? And we had a bit of a conversation about him a couple days ago. Eric Armstead
Yes.
was bossing that offensive line all game. And I know that Nick Bosa was also helping with that a great deal because he's Nick Bosa and he's a freak. There was one play I distinctly remember where he gets double teamed and beats them both off the line and gets a sack. It was insane. But Eric Armstead, they had no answer for him. He would bust through the middle, he would bust through the outside. It didn't matter what lane they gave him, if it was through the A gap or the B gap or the C gap, whatever gap he had, he took it and he got to Rodgers a lot.
Yeah.
Eric Armstead was causing problems all game.
Yeah.
I thought Fred Warner played a fantastic game in that linebacker position. Maybe less stated than Armstead and Bosa, but I think the way he shut down the middle of that field really made Rodgers' night difficult. Um, you obviously hear me talking a lot about defensive players because the offense was invisible at times. They couldn't get anything going for 90% of the game. But a lot of that also falls down to the weather conditions. We saw it earlier in the season with the Patriots and Bills game. Weather gets like this, man, and offense is the first thing to go.
Yeah.
That ball is hard. It feels like you're trying to catch a rock. Every time you get hit, it feels like you're getting hit by a steamroller because your body is cold. You're not able to retain heat. Everything hurts more. Your hands get stiff, right? Like, it's very easy to say, well, you're a professional player. You should just... That's not how the body works, right? That's just... Just because you're a professional footballer doesn't mean you can suddenly change the human body. Right? When your fingers get cold and they start to get a little bit numb out there, you're not going to be able to catch the ball very cleanly because you can't feel your fingers, right? Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of how the offenses flowed as well through the game. Obviously, Green Bay comes out and they score a touchdown immediately, so they come right out of the gate, and that is the perfect time. They're still not warm, but exactly. Like the juice is still flowing there. They haven't been enduring the weather for as long. And then we didn't see points for a stretch until midway through the third, just about. Until a Robbie Gould field goal to make it a 7-3 game. But as we're, as far as the situations and what could have been touchdowns, obviously, toward the end of that first half there, Niners driving down finally. Offense is looking decent. Jimmy G has a throw to the right corner right next to the end zone, right about the 1 yard line on a comeback route for George Kittle. Pick off by, I don't know who the DB was for Green Bay. Great pick off. I mean, great read on the play, jumped the route. A couple things. Adrian Amos.
Adrian Amos had one pick all season until then.
Hell of a time to get your second. Good shit.
Hell of a time to get your second pick of the year.
What's interesting about that, and actually I have a replay that's going right now that's kind of showing how the play works here. The way that one shook down is like the I think it's and we both were watching the game at the same time, and I think you made this comment as well, is like you could see where the window is on the comeback
window was
route.
There.
But Jimmy has to get out, roll out from a tackle, and then he's coming back, he's rolling out to the right, and he comes off his back foot. He just gives it too much air.
Yeah.
So ultimately a bad decision. You can't really it was a right throw to make. No, at that point it was a little too late.
Just eat it at that point, right? Take a couple yards on the run, kick your field goal.
Exactly. At that point you needed points. That was kind of my feeling on it, is like, oh Jesus, we can't not get points on this drive. Especially given how nothing was going right for our offense otherwise. Like just get 3.
Yeah. Especially you got Robbie Gould as your kicker, right? The dude kicked in Chicago for years. Cold weather games are nothing new to him. He knows exactly what he's got to do to kick in this situation.
Sure.
He showed it. He only had to kick 2 field goals, hit them both, looked clean, right? He did what he's done most of the year for San Francisco, which is pretty much do his job, right? He's a great kicker. You know what you got back there in Robbie Gould. I think you just got to eat that one. I get the idea of I see the guy and I see the window, but you also got to understand as a quarterback your timing and recognize I missed that one. That window's closed now. I just got to eat this ball.
I think also another thing to be said, it was timing just slightly thrown off. That's that could be like a half second, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Also, it's like with the cold, with bust up shoulder, that sort of thing. I gotta imagine just mechanically, not quite the zip, and obviously didn't step into that ball. Came off the back foot. No. That's always going to be a risky play right there. But then, yeah, going forward, I mean, obviously, you're talking about, the Niners defense able to continuously get stops on Rodgers. Rodgers, on the other side, that offense wasn't getting anything going either. That was outside of that one drive to begin the game. They got fucking shut down completely, and it wasn't even really close.
And like I said, you got to look beyond Rodgers' numbers because you see 20 of 29 for 225, no picks, no touchdowns, and you go, that's not a bad game.
Yeah.
You can work with that.
This is early season Rodgers this season.
Yeah,
that's the kind of games he's been having.
You got to look beyond those numbers, right? A lot of those yards were given to them by the Niners. They found themselves in 3rd and long a lot, and the Niners were like, go ahead and take 5-6 yards, but you're not getting a first down. You're not getting anything else. We're going to try to pressure you. We're going to hit you, and you're going to punt.
Yeah.
And again, well-schemed defense by the Niners. It's the thing that they've been doing all season. Their defensive scheming, I think, might be second to none. They play defense almost always the right way. And in this game, they were like, listen, why would we send constant blitzes when Armstead and Bosa are breaking your line every time? We're gonna play some zones. We're gonna send blitzes when we need to, just to show you blitz, right? To get it in your head that the blitz could come, but we're gonna keep everything in front of us. Yeah. Go ahead and pick up a few yards and then punt the ball back to us. And that's where a lot of Rodgers' numbers come from. That's where a lot of that 225 yards comes from, is plays like that. Go ahead, pick up 5-6 yards. They weren't over pursuing the ball. They weren't giving up anything behind them. Go ahead, take the yards in front of us. You're punting the ball back to us at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, and bend don't break has been absolutely how this team's operated. And then on the other side, when given most of the time and the opportunities, they've actually been offensively one of the best red zone offenses. So they've been able to kind of like take advantage of those small situations, win those battles right then and there, make them kick field goals instead of getting touchdowns, go for 4th downs instead of getting first downs, those sort of things. And just they add those things up, and they get more possessions and opportunities on an offense that at times, I think in this game, Shanahan decided to operate a little bit in the same vein that Belichick decided with the Patriots in that Patriots-Bills game. Run the rock. Didn't really Mac Jones Jimmy Garoppolo in that situation, only throwing 3 times, but definitely was more willing to run the rock than pass it. 19 throws versus 29 rushes. It's kind of interesting. It's all like kind of given the scenarios though, how this game could turn early on. We have some pretty bad drops. One that probably would have been
a row.
Pretty bad drop by Kittle, like over the middle. That's probably a tutty for George Kittle right there, or getting you into at least the red zone.
Yeah, at least a good chunk of yards. Who was it? Was it Ayuk? Like the next play or a couple plays later that was, or maybe a couple plays before. There was a situation there where there was about 2 of them in 3 or 4 plays that were really bad. And
then there was one where Jimmy actually throws a fucking beautiful ball. It's on the little post route on the slot receiver. Jawan Jennings played the slot receiver.
Jennings one, yeah.
The post, and he throws it to him. Right as he comes out of the post, he has just the smallest window because the DB's right there on the window, but he gets him on the cut right there. Hits him. And fucking Jennings doesn't come up. And we've been singing Jennings' praises. It's like, oh my God. And I understand. It's cold and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But those are a couple plays right there where that offense could have been going. Could have had actually some offensive scores there. But it didn't happen. But then on the flip side, after that Jimmy G pick, one thing that's very interesting and kind of going to, I guess this goes against maybe the scheming, but just overall what kind of defense that you're having to deal with the Niners. I think it goes to 2nd or 3rd down on the next drive as the Pack is deep in their zone now because of where the pick happened. And they had lost
yards, I believe, on the first 2 plays going into 3rd down.
Yeah, and you get Aaron Jones on that wheel route to the near sideline. A little bit of breakdown in coverage. I don't think the linebacker drops back enough as far as the zone, lets him go over the top of him. Beautiful ball. And Jones is just streaking down. You have Jaworski Tart coming from beyond the hash on the other side of the field, come all the way over and run his ass down. Aaron Jones, now, he did try to like do a little cut inside. He kind of slowed himself down. Might have been better off just sprinting down the sideline as best you can to get the touchdown. But
It was Jimmy Ward who broke down on that play, by the way. I distinctly remember that.
Yeah.
Because Jimmy Ward then ends up being the one who blocks the field goal, making up for the broken down coverage. It was he stepped up. They ran a pretty decent scheme where they had two crosses underneath, and then they had Jones run the real route behind. Jimmy Ward stepped up to cover the crossing route and let Aaron Jones get behind him on the wheel.
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, not exactly a linebacker then. Safety on the come up, but yeah, the way he kind of shifts around, he plays short instead of following the backer on the wheel there. And usually, coming out to the flat, that just kind of happens, and then when they go up the sideline, you get burned. But yeah, that stops a 14-0 game. And if you go by the end score, that's enough to win you the fucking game right there if nothing else changes, right? Because the Niners only put up 13 points in the game, so that's it right there.
I think the identity of the Niners comes out, like I said, a few plays later. They're able to hold the Packers, force them to a field goal, and who's the guy who gets through, forces his way through, and blocks that field goal? It's Jimmy Ward. Because that's the Niners' identity. It's been their identity all season. If you screw up, you're going to make a play to make up for it.
Yeah. I mean, next down. Let's go. Come on. Rally up.
Short memory, out of sight, out of mind. Watch what I do to make up for it.
Also, the Packers special teams is fucking garbage. Because there's no way they should have let
Sean Manega, that's the name that you got to remember, because that guy needs to get fired
fucking turnstile, dude. He let him right through. Yeah, okay, Drew. Bam! Swat that shit down. Or actually, I think he just swatted it with the one hand. But yeah.
Fun fact about the Green Bay Packers and why their special teams might have been shit all season. Did you know that their long snapper is 5'11", 200 pounds? They brought in a long snapper in the offseason. 5'11", 200 pounds converted DB into be a long snapper. And the dude's been getting run over all season because he's 5'11", 200 pounds.
That's not on the snapper on that one. That's on that whole whole side of coverage there.
My point being on this is on the block punt, that's 100% on the snapper.
Sure.
He goes right through the middle. He goes right through the middle on the block punt.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where, again, if you have a more traditional, 6'2", 260-pound long snapper, he's going to snap the ball back, and he's going to be able to help cut across and block those guys trying to get through the middle.
Yeah. And you know who was former Packers long snapper that they ended up getting rid of, who is now with the Niners? Our long snapper, Tabor Pepper, who also, drop him a follow on Twitter. He's a fucking good follow. My boy Tabor Pepper, man. Scott CFM fave. But yeah, that's been their special teams haven't been able to get it right all season. They can't get it right on coverage. They can't get it right on blocking. It's been a problem, and it in a game that's as tight as this one was, field goals here and there, that's just crazy how much that stuff makes a difference. I mean, an extra field goal for the Pack, they might still be playing overtime because neither offense could fucking score, So.
Also, Mason Crosby with another miss. He's had a bit of a weird season.
Yeah.
Usually a guy who's pretty automatic.
Might be time to hang him up.
Crosby had a bit of a rough one this year. 25 of 34 on the season.
Yeah.
It's not the worst season you're ever going to see, but for a guy who we're so used to being automatic,
it might be time, honestly, for him to hang it up, honestly. Because he had some rough stretches this season. He was not making stuff. I think he had a game where I want to say he might have even missed 3.
The Bengals game. the crazy Bengals game where nobody could hit a field goal.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
That happened this season. Jesus Christ. What a season.
Um,
That happened this season. That's crazy.
but yeah, I
forgot
just
about
figured I'd throw that one out there too,
Oh.
because Mason Crosby, usually Mr. Automatic,
that. All right.
has struggled at times this year. And if he's not gonna hang him up, maybe a change of scenery, something similar to what happened with Robbie Gould.
Yeah.
Right? Now Robbie was a lot younger than Mason was when the Bears cut him, but the Bears did a similar thing. They're like, listen, he's been great for us for a long time now, but struggled in the preseason, doesn't look like the same guy. Maybe we got to move on.
Yeah.
I think with the Bears, it was a mistake because they judged that on a preseason cutting a 2-time Pro Bowl kicker.
Right.
With Mason Crosby, we've seen a full season of him not looking like the same Mason Crosby. Maybe something Green Bay needs to look at, but more importantly, first things first, they got to get rid of their special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
John Manega, I looked that one up before this stream. That guy's got to go, man. Like, unacceptable how bad the Packers special teams were all season, and it cost them this game. The Packers special teams is what cost them this game on the game-winning field goal. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say field goals don't get blocked very often. There's one blocked in this game. Yeah. They had 10 guys on the field.
Crazy. That's great.
Can't do that. You can't let that happen.
That's the last snap you run on the season right there. You're over, and you have one less player. That's kind of that almost
off of a timeout.
That's
unacceptable.
It's a great it's great imagery, a great representation of how the season kind of went for the Packers. They always just seem one thing short, and for the most part, it's been their special teams. Apparently, I remember reading something to where they went cheap on their special teams coordinator as well. Like they could have got a guy, chose not to, and went with a lesser. So this is biting them on the ass.
Versace is looking for a special teams position.
I mean, yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, yeah. Hey, why not?
Right?
Why the fuck not?
I mean, the Raiders special teams was pretty damn good this year.
Yeah.
He looked like a pretty decent head coach. Maybe look at Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah. And throwing
that one out there.
One more thing I'll bring up before we maybe move on to the next one, because we were on this a week early. The fire that has come upon our boy Jimmy G this week in the media. Good God, the back and forth. We won't get into fucking details. No need to really get into it. You've already heard our opinions on it. You already know that. Yeah. We were on this early though. We had this a week ago.
That's why you come watch sports cliches. We're weeks ahead of the game.
We are on top of it with our rants, but yeah, what a firestorm that came under that. You gotta love, obviously. The one thing I will say, you gotta love, obviously, the and to be expected. It's not like you're gonna throw your starting quarterback under the bus sort of thing, but
it's definitely not going into the championship game.
you got the boys rallying around at that sort of thing. You got certain prognosticators, former players and stuff like that, kind of giving their opinions, good and bad. So it's a whirlwind of shit. But when it comes down to it, Jimmy G going to another NFC championship. We'll see.
All I'll say is there has been significantly worse quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. You can make it work with Garoppolo. He might not be elite, but you can certainly make it work with him.
Right. And let's go with a guy who you'd argue. And I would argue has made it more than kind of just work for him. Matty Stafford and the LA Rams.
I said it at the start of the season.
Just look at that. Matty Stafford and the LA Rams pull it off against TB12 and the TB Bucks. What a fucking game that was, obviously. You're talking about, obviously, we brought up KC Buffalo's game of the year there, but I mean that was a fucking hell of a way to start the Sunday right there. Brady almost fucking did it again. That was incredible.
There's a reason he's the GOAT. There's a reason he's the GOAT. You give him time, he's gonna make things happen. The problem is he was facing another very good quarterback who is very motivated in Matthew Stafford. Stafford looks like a man possessed right now. He knows all the things that people are saying about him. Oh, I can't play in the playoffs. oh, look at what he did in Detroit, right? This isn't a guy who can take you all the way and win games. Matt Stafford's looking to prove to people, hey, listen, I get my history in Detroit, but I was in Detroit. Look at what I do with a team. And Matt Stafford is doing it. I know he ended the season kind of rough, but again, I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances going into the end of the season with the Rams. You lose a guy like Robert Woods, it's going to take a while to adjust. Yeah. Right? They are hitting their stride at the right time. Odell Beckham Jr. has fit in there like a glove. And this is a very interesting matchup going into this week. Right. That Rams offense versus that Niners defense is the matchup you beg to see in a championship game.
Yeah.
Because it's strength on strength, right? It is strength on strength.
Yeah. I mean, it's what you got to worry about for the Rams team going forward is they had this game fucking sealed up, right? And
flipped.
All of a sudden, you're talking about a game in which you're leading by 24 points. Yeah. More than midway through the third quarter.
Yep.
Bucks drive down, and then they only get a field goal, and I thought that was the nail in the coffin. I couldn't believe they kicked a field goal with like 3 minutes left in the third. Granted, they got stopped. It was 4th and 11, but I'm like, you got to go for a tutty here, right? You can't just get a field goal down 24. You're just going to still make it a 3-possession game? You're going for 24 or 21
points. Yeah, it didn't change much.
I couldn't believe they did that. But then that's when the wheels start coming off. Cam Akers, he's fumbling the ball all of a sudden. What the fuck's happening there? Obviously, Tom Brady starts to turn it on. That offense, for everything that they had done throughout the game, it's kind of weird. Like, in the fourth quarter, it goes back and forth, but they can't take advantage. They have a long stretch in the fourth quarter for most of that fourth quarter to where nobody scores. And they could easily just get one more possession down the field there. Got to be a little concerning that they weren't able to just wrap this game up. This game was fucking done. 24 points, less than a quarter and a half to go. You got to be kidding me. You can't wrap that up. I know it's Tom Brady and shit, but I mean, and he was a Falcons fan. You've seen this story fucking play out before. Oh. Deja vu. I mean, but Jesus Christ, like, make a play, somebody. That was, and then for it all to come to that, and then Tampa Bay just lets them fucking drive down the field anyways. What a fucking step up. Like, for being as dead as they were for that second half, it seemed, for a large part of it, all of a sudden, Stafford's able to fucking click it on. Bam, bam, bam. I think they 2 or 3 plays. I think that's all it took. Taking a field goals. Good night. Crazy.
I think I mentioned it when we were in call. Matt Stafford must have been having flashbacks to Detroit, watching everybody around him fumble the ball.
Yeah.
Like, that was ridiculous. It was, 3 fumbles in the fourth quarter? I think,
I thought I thought he had Cam had 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, but maybe it was 2 in the fourth.
Maybe, and then Van Jefferson, I think, fumbled 1 too.
No.
He's just out there going like, come on, guys, please. But again, the narrative around Matthew Stafford needs to be done now. He's not a playoff player anymore, because that last drive, that's the drive of a guy who can win games in the playoffs, right? He knew his guy. He knew his guy was Cooper Kupp. They were drawing up plays to get the ball to Cooper Kupp, and Matt Stafford was hitting them. Right? He was hitting Odell. He was hitting Cooper Kupp. He wasn't missing many throws. 28 of 38 for 366, 2 touchdowns, no picks. His misses were not bad misses in this game. When he was missing guys, they were going out of bounds.
Yeah.
That the narrative on Matt Stafford needs to be done now. I know it's been around for a while, but these 2 playoff games, I think, have proven Matt Stafford can play in the playoffs if you give him an actual team.
Yeah. I mean, they're it will be interesting. I mean, you got a guy who, as experienced as he is, this is a very
This
new
is a very new
scenario for
realm.
this guy. So this will be very interesting. You honestly, it's kind of crazy. You have a guy um, who hasn't been not nearly as many games, but you got to say as far as playoff experience, like doing it in uh, the most pressured moments. You got a guy like Jimmy G who's played a lot less as far as snaps and that sort of thing, coming in with a lot more experience in the situations than what Matt
Yep.
Stafford has. But and then yeah, the only other thing I think for the Rams is you got to be concerned. Granted, it's crazy in that fourth quarter, but you're talking about uh, two three and outs by that offense, along with a bad fumble by Cam, and then that short field goal miss by
Yeah.
Matt Gay.
By Matt Gay.
So yeah,
I I will say to that, momentum's a bitch. I often think back to the quicksand quote from the replacements where Keanu Reeves is talking about, something bad happens and then something else happens, and then before you know it, every time the more you struggle, the deeper you get, right? Like you're in quicksand.
mm-hmm.
And again, I go back to, yeah, they're all professional players, but they're also human beings. When those things start happening and you start feeling like you're falling, it can be a thing where sometimes you're just trying too hard to get out of the slump.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened in the fourth quarter. I don't think it was a mentality issue. I think it was almost the opposite. They were trying too hard, right? Like that Cam Akers fumble, the late one, it's just him fighting for an extra yard he didn't need to fight for. Right, he's got two guys on him. Just go down at that point, right? But he's out there. He's thinking, if I can get this first down, we're gonna win. And he's pushing too hard, and he just left the ball out there, right? These are the kind of things that I don't think would happen 99% of the time. But when that momentum's working against you, they're just gonna happen, man. It's just one of those things. I'm not terribly worried about it carrying over, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna claim that it's like I think for the most part Stafford is pretty much proven that he's a great call. I mean, what a
Yeah.
quarterback that they ended up getting in a situation where it wasn't looking good with Goff going forward for that team, as talented as they were. It seemed like they were only going to go so far. Stafford getting put in a situation, it was kind of sink or swim. Like if you can't get it done here, you're the guy that
You're
you
the guy that
were in
you were
Detroit,
in
and
Detroit.
yeah, you couldn't get it done there. You couldn't get it done here. It's very telling to the legacy. So what a
I am happy for Matt Stafford, man. Like that dude went through hell in Detroit. There's a lot of shit Detroit teams that he was on, trying his best to pull them beyond what they were. And it's nice to see him have a good team around him and actually show like, hey, it wasn't me. Like Detroit's problems ran deeper than one Matthew Stafford. And it's nice to see him going out there and proving it.
yeah.
We had this conversation at the start of the year, before sports cliches was even a thing. We used to do this before we recorded it.
Yeah. Just
Um,
rants
but
on shit.
we did have the Matthew Stafford conversation, and I was very pro Matthew Stafford. You were wait and see,
Yeah.
but I think we've seen now, right? I think we know now that Matt Stafford is a guy that, with this kind of a team, he's more than good enough to lead you. This game coming up, and we'll talk about it more as we get into our picks for this week, is going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah. And yeah, let's I don't see any reason why not. Let's jump right into them. I suppose let's begin with the Niners Rams. Why not? Even though that's kind of flipping the order of them, but whatever. They're both being played Sunday. Who cares? Um, and I suppose our picks here are going to tell what our predictions are for the Super Bowl matchup as well. So very interesting. Let's go into the conference championship games for the weekend, both Sunday, January 30th. We got the San Francisco, number 6 seed, San Francisco 49ers going into LA yet again, into South Levi's, as we like to call it, to face the Los Angeles Rams, number 4 seed. LA getting minus 3.5 here at home. Perhaps, obviously, lot to be said as far as, records and that sort of thing, but got a San Francisco team that has beaten this LA team twice. They just played here in LA at the last game of the regular season, and it was practically a Niners home game. What are you thinking going into this one? Jimmy G, Matt Stafford, greatest show on turf V2 versus Niners 2010-ish defense V2, basically. Killer, killer defense versus killer offense, running game, passing game. They're not polar opposites of one another, but definitely some intrigue as far as how both these teams have gone along this season. You got we've seen this in baseball. The star-studded LA roster versus kind of the scrappier San Francisco boys. What do you got going in this game?
This one is a hard one for me because going into the playoffs, my Super Bowl matchup was Rams and Titans. Oops on the Titans, but
you're pretty close. Pretty close.
I love the way this Rams roster is built. I think that offense is scary good. That defense is just full of guys who make plays. Right? They might not be the most talented defense as far as like if you look at the numbers, they're probably not the best defense or up there with the best defenses, but they make plays. And those defenses can sometimes be scary. This Niners team reminds me a lot of a certain 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. In that they're not going to put up a ton of points on you, but that offense isn't going to make a ton of mistakes either. They're going to drive the ball slowly, methodically, run the ball a lot, but they're going to get the job done. And that defense, you're not getting a lot on them, right? So it's this interesting battle of the team that going into the playoffs I thought was the best team versus the team that I now might think is the team that's most likely to beat the Chiefs. I'm leaning San Francisco. My reason for leaning San Francisco is the crowd. I think in a game like this, a crowd can make a world of difference, and that crowd is going to be pro Niners. I know that they limited ticket sales to be like, you can only buy tickets if you're in LA.
No. So here's, sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but just to bring to that point. So yeah, that was the hilarious story going into this was right off the bat, Ticketmaster or whatever said, I think it was Ticketmaster said that they would, you had to be within a certain geographical range to be able to buy tickets to this game, which is not actually allowed. So big stink got raised. It brought a lot of attention to it. There were all sorts of like buying out tickets. Former players, all sorts of folks jumped in like, hey, no, we got you. I think George Kittle's wife or girlfriend, I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure wife, was like, here is a site you could go get you a single-use credit card number for the like Southern California area. Nice. Oh, yeah, it was great. I know Kelly Stafford, Matt Stafford's wife, jumped in there, was offering tickets to the Rams players. So it's caused a big thing. Apparently, this is going to be the highest selling. I don't know how the hell that works because I think every fucking playoff game has to be fucking sold out. But apparently, this is like the biggest sold out. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's specific to LA. But yeah, it's looking like per early statistics, whoever you want to believe on it, I've is going
70% of the tickets they believe have gone to Niners fans.
I heard 60, but wow, that would be insane.
I had heard 70.
That's a home game and a half. It's
going to be a 70-30 split Niners fans.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be loud in there, and surprisingly, it's going to be the road team who's going to benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, Levi South. It is
Yeah.
it is our second home. Yeah, of course you know where I'm going, baby. Niners, baby. Let's go. Uh, this is this is a game in which you talk about the third time these teams are playing, and it's nice to be like, yeah, we beat them the last two times. Fucking Shanahan owns McVay, all that stuff. It's still you're playing a team for the third time, so something I have to think about is what are you gonna bring to the table this time? Because you gotta figure they got the tape on you. They know what is worth against them. It's a lot of history to go back on and be able to analyze going forward. Um, Injuries on the Niners side are a little worrisome. Trent Williams obviously was a
Trent
big.
Williams sounds bad. I know he's listed
He,
as questionable, but did you hear the statement Kyle Shanahan put out
he
about watching him move?
practice that sort of thing. He was moving slow, basically, right? It's basically what I had
He
seen. Is
he said it looks scary watching Trent Williams move.
I think he's you got to be worried. I mean, this is your stud. This is your stud left tackle. It's your the highest rated player on one of the most vulnerable positions on your team right now, and your other tackle didn't play great last season, so you have an extra caution there when it comes to that guy. Not to say it's not
There's
warranted. Absolutely, if he looks bad, he looks bad. That's just it. But
and there's the Aaron Donald factor,
right,
which is the big factor about why this is concerning, right?
yeah. What's interesting with AD is he got worked in his first game against the Niners this season.
Yes.
He was not effective, and obviously that is with Trent in there. This is a very much like unit based, slide over protection sort of offensive line. It's how they've operated. Obviously, they got guys like Juice, Kittle, who are also willing to come in there, and so you could essentially have seven linemen almost on a given play. But yeah, AD, no doubt, got to be a factor. Got to be someone you're looking at, and you got to be worried. How much do you want to have Trent out there on his lonesome, having to make a block for you on the outside, that sort of thing. Depending on how they
Yeah.
scheme it, what kind of stunts they're trying to pull. I'm sure if Trent's seeing the field, they'll probably test him early. They're gonna attack that left side and see
Oh,
if the
100%.
the All Pro can still hang in there. That's gonna be a big question mark. But uh, I- you know, it's hard for me to think that Trent's not gonna give it a go and fucking get out there
Oh,
uh,
I
and battle as best he can. Whether that's good enough or not, we'll see. Right? It's kind of the same thing with Jimmy. I think he's battled out there and it's been sketchy, but like he's gonna give this team the best opportunity. I think, and we'll battle through it. Not ideal injuries you want to have, obviously, but in a weird way, this team is decently healthy going into this game as well, as far as some other key position groups. We've brought up the defensive backfield before. They are looking better than ever right now, as far as that's concerned. Obviously, front seven defensively, for the most part, is going to be getting after it. And this front four for the Niners gets after Stafford. He does not have a good time against this front four, as a lot of teams haven't against the Niners. If they continue getting there without having to blitz too much, it could spell a lot similar of a game as they've had, or at least the second half. Granted, we got to remember in that Week 18 matchup, Rams were out to a 17-0 lead before the Niners were able to storm back on that one. So can't imagine the Niners can let that happen again and get away with it. Be honest.
I wonder if the scheme for LA that you can kind of flip the script on with that might be a little bit more of Tyler Higbee. Higbee played a
Right.
really good.
Early. Yeah, he was great
Yeah,
early, obviously, for him.
Higbee was really good early for them,
Yep.
and it forced Tampa Bay to consider taking him away. And then once Tampa Bay did that, that's when Cooper Kupp really started to break out.
Or are you saying for the Niners? Or, well, Tampa Bay, he's probably active as well in that game, right? But
Yeah,
Higbee
4 for
was
51, but
yeah
it was almost all in the first half.
yeah Higbee
Right,
was
and then what
great in the
happened?
first half against the Niners as well. Same thing basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened in the Bucks game last week was they started early, getting the ball to Higbee. He was picking up big chunks of yardage. Tampa Bay then had to close in because they didn't really have a great matchup for Higbee, and that's when they started to break off Cooper Kupp. I wonder if you might not see more of the same in the first half in this game. That Higbee as a safety valve could be a great way for the Rams
Yeah.
to get quick passes off, stay away from the pass rush, really work in that big body of Tyler Higbee. Maybe start to back off the Niners a little bit, right? Maybe start to have them think about doing some different things on defense to try to defend that, and maybe that's where you start to get open Cooper Kupp. Maybe it's a similar thought there. Another person who could be big in this game is Odell Beckham, right? And I know that sounds easy to say. Well, he's a great receiver, but for this game in particular,
Right.
Odell Beckham's always been great at running the screen game, right? Odell Beckham's always been a great screen receiver. And again, if you're looking at how do you neutralize a pass rush, it's you get the ball out of your hands quick,
Right.
right? You got to have that. You got to have that clock in your head. By 3 steamboats, that ball's got to be gone, right? And so, some short routes to Higbee, some screen passes to Beckham. This could be the way that you maybe open up this defense a little bit. Maybe that's how you take the bite out of this pass rush. Because they don't run the ball well, right? I don't hate Cam Akers as a running back, but he's certainly not the kind of guy who's going to help you really get that pass rush off of you, right? The Niners aren't going to be concerned about Cam Akers. If Cam Akers is going to beat you, it'll be the first time this year. So be it. Right, I think they're more concerned about Stafford in that passing game beating them than Cam Akers. I think early in this game, especially, unless Cam Akers forces them to change that, which he hasn't been able to really do this year, they're gonna let Cam Akers run. Right, they're not gonna do anything to stunt that running game because I don't think they're concerned about it right now. If the Rams really want to win this game, they've got to get short passing game going, and Cam Akers needs to do something to make the Niners fear him on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cam Akers can do that.
Right. I don't necessarily see that happening. I mean, granted, any player could be a threat. They start going off, and you give them the opportunity to, right?
I mean,
But
what
yeah.
was it? Singletary a couple weeks ago, he hadn't done anything all season, and then in the wild card game, goes off for the Bills
Yeah.
against the Patriots.
It's so interesting going to this game when you like. And granted, stats only tell so much of the story. You can kind of work them in any sort of way, but it's very interesting. These two teams are actually neck and neck. Niners 8th in total yards per game, Rams 9th, which might go counter to your thought as far as the Niners being an offensively driven team, but are able to keep it going, able to keep it moving, and it shows in the time of possession. Niners being one of your top 10 time of possession teams, Rams being one of your bottom 10 time of possession teams. And then going into kind of the running game, I think it's a direct reflection of that, obviously. Yeah, Rams have not been a good running game team, under 100 yards average a game. That's not what they're going for. That's not what's going to happen. And yeah, when you have a guy that like Odell that is starting to click in this offense for the Rams, it'll be interesting with a defensive backfield that luckily is at the place they are. I wonder if Odell was kind of at the place he is right now, it seems like, for this offense, and we're talking about a like week 15 Niners defensive squad that is missing Emmanuel Mosley, that is leaning on Ambry Thomas to cover ones and stuff like that. You have a Cooper Kupp out there. You don't even have a Kwan Williams out there. He was injured as well. This could have been a mess. But right now, with guys like that, Emmanuel Mosley, you have a Thomas that's had that experience after a crazy first season for him.
And really grew with the season, too. Ambry
Right.
Thomas really, like, week 15 Ambry Thomas isn't the same Ambry Thomas you're going to be facing now.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's grown with the season. He's kind of evolved as the game has asked him to evolve.
Yeah. And stepped up for a guy that was just purely thrust into the position, just out of necessity. We only have so many warm bodies on here. You get out there and you're covering Jamar Chase. Good luck.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun with AJ Brown.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And at times, it wasn't. But credit to the kid, obviously. And what a it's I brought this up last week. What a fucking that defensive backfield is dangerous as hell. Jaquaski Tart, Jimmy Ward as your safeties. You got those guys we just brought up as far as Williams, Thomas, Mosley, even Josh Norman when he's
Norman
right.
can still get a job done if he needs to.
And then you already know about the front seven, so it's there. It's there for this team to really lock it down, be that dominant defense that they have shown in quite a few years past at this point, but kind of reigniting that. And obviously in 2019 they were showing out as well. And yeah, with a lack of running game, this will be Matty Stafford having to work against that unit. But they beat him 3 times here. Whoa. And at home again, I wonder what you do as the Rams if you do lose this game, because as the Niners, you're playing with house money almost, right?
There's nothing to lose here for the Niners.
Yeah, this is a feel good thing. This is they had to fight to make the playoffs.
Expectation, especially after week 8.
Energy's feeling good. They got they're about to make an away game a home game right now. This is going to be a fun week for them. I think they're coming in. They got to be coming in a lot looser. And if anything, that's a recipe for Jimmy to at least operate at a decent click. I feel when this team's just kind of going, they have all the confidence in having him run the offensive side of things. This running game, I gotta say, is they gotta be looking to click here. It should be a really fun matchup for sure. And that'll be our second game of the evening, so that's not even the leadoff for the weekend.
And I will say really quickly,
yeah.
I did mention Tyler Higbee, and you mentioned the defensive backs, and deservedly so. That secondary is very great. This game's going to fall a lot on Fred Warner. Not necessarily his ability to rush, but his ability to cover or his ability to defend in coverage. Because he's probably going to be the one who's going to have to deal with Higbee over the middle. I think he's a decent coverage linebacker. He does a good job, but he's really going to have to be on his game over the middle with Tyler Higbee there.
I was actually going to bring up, thank you for reminding me, what I was going to bring up, look for the matchup on especially I think the Rams like to run some trip formations to where they'll run Higbee, wide out, and probably Odell is your slot on that. Look for the situation that Kwan Williams there as a slot, your nickel corner, with Fred Warner shading his side as well. They will play the same side. So that's a play that naturally on that inside post is going to fall to Warner to play the deep, be able to cover Higbee, exactly kind of to your point. He will be vital, as linebackers will be with a player like Higbee. He did operate pretty goddamn well in that Week 18 game. So no reason to think he won't potentially get some looks here. See how San Francisco is able to react to it, because they got to know it's coming as well.
Yeah, and it's definitely not what you have Fred Warner in your lineup. He's one of the better run stoppers in the league. Yeah. But he can do a job in pass coverage, right? Mm-hmm. It's not his bread and butter, but he's perfectly capable of doing it. We've seen him do it against other tight ends, right, in not very favorable matchups, and he's done a perfectly acceptable job of keeping them in check. That's what he's going to have to do this game. I don't think you're going to shut down Tyler Higbee, especially the way he's played the last few weeks. I think Higbee's going to get his catches, but the Niners are going to try to do what the Niners did to Green Bay and what they've done all season. They'll give you your underneath 3, 4, 5 yard passes, take them all day. You're going to punt the ball back to us.
And just for clarification, we might as well make both the picks, I think. So you have Niners to cover. It's a 3.5 point spread. So you have Niners to cover. You have Niners to win?
I have Niners outright.
All right. Same here, obviously. I think we'll make a mark of both those for this game, because this one's a little bit more interesting. In the first game of the day, It's crazy to say, the Cincinnati Bengals, number 4 seed Cincinnati Bengals, going in
Never.
to number 2 Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City getting -7 at home here. We got a
Spicy one.
we got a noon or 12 p.m. noon whatever Pacific time, 3 Eastern kickoff on this one. Giant line for an AFC Championship game. Maybe a little smack in the mouth, a little little shitty line there for the Bengals that they're getting, but at the same time, kind of a spicy line. A spicy line as far as betting is concerned. What do you have going into this one, Craig?
Bengals got to be frustrated by that line because it's probably good bulletin board material for them because they're probably looking at that going, we beat these guys like a month ago.
Right.
Like, we beat them outright. 34-31. Bengals win.
Bang.
We are getting really undersold here. This is going to be a very difficult game for the Bengals. You're going into Kansas City in the playoffs against playoff Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is one of those few guys out there who is just a different animal in the playoffs. We've seen it his whole career. There's no reason to believe it's any different now after coming off of that game against the Bills. This guy in the playoffs has another gear that most teams haven't seen. You got a Bengals team who's been giving up far too many sacks, even this year, against the Kansas City defense that hasn't been great this year, but if they can get pressure on the quarterback, it's going to be difficult for the Bengals. The Bengals are going to have to play a perfect game to win this. Right? The Bengals, you're making a couple mistakes. You're doing what you did last week where you're kicking field goals in the red zone. You're getting skunked. Right? No. This Kansas City team's not going to let the foot off the pedal. They're not going to show you any mercy. They're not going to back down. They've scored 40-plus in both of their playoff games so far. One of them against a significantly better defense than yours in Buffalo. Now, mind you, we talked about the Tre'Davious White situation, but that's still the number 1 defense in the NFL. Even post Tre'Davious White. They lost Tre'Davious White a few weeks ago. The Bengals need to play this perfectly. And I wonder if they can do that at this point in their development. This is still a very young team. Their best wide receiver's a rookie, and their quarterback played, 4 games last season before being done for the year, or 5? It wasn't many. This is a very young team that is still learning on the job, even here in the AFC Championship game. Yeah. I think in a couple years, this is a team that can challenge and beat Kansas City and Buffalo in the playoffs. Don't know if they're there right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, you only know until you kind of get into the situation right now. This is definitely going to be a wake up call. I perhaps something we've discussed previously. You know, the big game sort of thing. We talked about Joe Burrow specifically being at LSU playing for a national championship, right?
That guy's just a winner.
Yeah.
I think we've seen more than enough of Joe Burrow in the NFL to just see that guy he knows what to do to win games.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the one thing, this is strange, this isn't typical, but I think that what they showed in that Kansas City game that they previously played, they were down a couple touchdowns there. It was not looking good. This is a team, though, that has the offensive firepower and, you know, the ability to still perform to where they're able to rally back when they're down multiple scores against even a team like Kansas City. So that's a rare thing.
Yeah.
Young teams will collapse potentially if they don't get out early and they're not like right there. If they fall that far behind, it could be tough for those teams to potentially get back up to it. It's like, you deflated, that sort of thing. Maybe people are not feeling so great about it. They're not clicking the same way they were before. It could be frustrating. That will happen more to a young team that's probably a little less disciplined than an older team, just naturally as far as age is concerned. But this Bengals team doesn't do that.
Yeah, and there is something to be said. We've seen it a few times with younger teams where if you have enough talent on that team, sometimes you're just too naive to realize that this is a game you should lose. Right?
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times with young talented teams where
That
they go out there and they're down 17 points and sometimes a more veteran team will go, "Listen, it's just not our day. Let's just go out there. Let's try to get the offense clicking. Let's see if we can get something done." But you've been in that
that
game before where you recognize that you lose this game.
yeah.
And sometimes as a young team, you go out there, you go, I mean, yeah, whatever. We're down 17. Let's just go out there and score some touchdowns, man. Let's do it. Right? There's both sides of that coin, right? Because I'm with you. A lot of times with young teams, they tend to fold in situations like that. But there is the other side of that coin. Whereas a veteran team, sometimes you're just like, listen, it's just not our day out there today, right? And even though I'm not saying you give up per se, but you have that thing in the back of your head where you've been through this game before. Whereas a young team, you really have it, right? Down 14 to the Kansas City Chiefs, who cares? We're the Cincinnati Bengals. We're gonna beat them, right? Like, there's both sides of that coin. But you're right. They have this different mentality about them. There's something about this Bengals team that they don't care what the score is. They don't care who they're playing. They have this almost foolish faith in themselves that they're gonna go out there and win. It doesn't matter.
And I think honestly, like, and probably it's what's led to this line being so drastic as it is, despite the result that happened earlier this, just less than a month ago here, is the fact that they just played a 19-point game against Tennessee. Granted,
Where they
Tennessee's
couldn't get in
damn
the
good.
end zone easily.
But if we've seen anything, especially this season, is that you can't really connect things from week to week.
Yep.
There's been very little consistency in this season. The only thing that's been consistent is you just don't really know what kind of product you're getting out of some of these squads. Cincinnati has been one of those teams. They have had a very up and down season. They have lost some bad-looking games on offense, and it hasn't gone. But then they play a game like Kansas City, and they can still put up 34 points against them. I like Cincinnati for the spread. I like Cincinnati for the win.
Ooh, guys got the Bengals outright. This game does fit the Bengals' MO, right? They like to be in those shootouts. They're not a big time of possession team, so when other teams keep the ball on them a lot, they tend to struggle. They like being in those games where it's just going to be quick strike. They want to be in that Buffalo Kansas City game. That's the kind of game that their team is best suited for. I think I said it last week against Buffalo. Kansas City they have a level in the playoffs that I haven't yet seen many teams reach.
Sure.
Right? They do. They just turn it up that extra notch in the playoffs that teams just don't have the ability to match that. This is going to be a very, very tight game, I think. I'm with you on the Bengals cover. I do
Go the Bengals.
I do think the Chiefs take this game outright. I think Mahomes, again, at some point late in the game, he's going to have the ball in his hands. And I think he's going to do something with it. I've just seen it. I've seen the story play out a million times. Give this a year or two, and this game's going to be awesome in the playoffs. Absolute barn burner.
Fair.
I just don't think the Bengals are there yet. I worry too much about that offensive line.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow.
It's got to be the case. Yeah, you got to worry about that.
He wasn't sacked a record number of times this year. It was only bad. So...
Yeah. But that last game, you gotta admit, like 9 times, that's too many fucking sacks right there, and
way too many.
Big reason why they only put up as many points they did. Their drive stalled out with those sacks happening so frequent, so they can't revert back to that shit again.
No, I get that KC's defense isn't world beating, but they have. It's not like the Bengals line has only been doing this against world-beating defenses, right? No. It's just that the Bengals offensive line isn't there yet. And that's very concerning to me. If Joe Burrow gets sacked even 5 or 6 times in this game, it doesn't need to be 9, right? even if they get to him 4 or 5 times and they're forcing him to throw the ball a little bit quicker than he wants to, like I said, I feel like the Bengals have to play a near perfect game to win this one. And I just don't think in the progression of the Bengals they're there yet. This Bengals team reminds me a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs team from about 4 years ago that made it to the same point and got beat by Tom Brady. And the Patriots just had a little bit more on that day. I think the Chiefs are going to do the same thing here.
Yeah, and I think that's equal on both sides, and I completely agree as far as the Bengals offensive line's got to step up, and obviously KC's pass rush defense in general has stepped up a lot from what they were in the early part of the season, right? Same thing on the flip side, though. I think it's not to be discredited. This Cincinnati Bengals defensive front is solid. They were getting to the quarterback. They had one of the league leaders in sacks this year. On the flip side, this KC offensive line was the worst early in the season. If they, for some whatever reason, and it could happen, you could just have an off game. It's not clicking. They're scheming against you perfectly, that sort of thing. If KC, for any reason, reverts back to an early season form as far as their offensive line, this Bengals team will feast. Patrick Mahomes will be rushed. And knowing that, he's going to probably throw some bad balls to a Bengals team that is ready, as we saw with those DBs in the last game. They are ready to pick off the ball, get some turnovers on this team. That is one of the opportunities that they will have, I think, going forward, is that pass rush. See if they could actually get to Mahomes a little bit. Maybe not sacks, but if you disrupt him enough, he can make some bad decisions for it.
I get what you're saying. I just haven't seen that out of playoff Patrick Mahomes. We saw it early in the season, but I can't remember a Patrick Mahomes playoff game where he was just making bad decision after bad decision.
First half of the 2019 Super Bowl. The Niners were getting to him. And then second half fucking came along.
But then there was second half Patrick Mahomes.
I was there. I remember.
He's just a different guy in the playoffs, right? And that's what really scares me here is like, I hope the Bengals aren't putting too much stock in beating them a few weeks ago. You can draw off of it for sure, but I also hope there's an understanding that, you know, this guy shows up way differently in the playoffs, and you cannot expect the game to play out the same way. He's going to come out there and he's going to do what he does every playoff game.
I don't think that's a terrible take. I'm hoping the dream season continues for Cincinnati Bengals and Joey Burrow.
What a Super Bowl that would be, though. Niners and Bengals? Who would have fucking
predicted
that?
We're going back to Super Bowl 23. And guess what? We're on, Super Bowl 56? So
56.
Not quite. It's double plus 10, I guess, as far as the number is concerned.
Bengals have won one road playoff game in their history, and it was last week.
Here we go. So just to review, only 2 games, obviously. We're right there at the end. But as far as both picking the winner and against the spread, for the first game at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'm taking Cincinnati. Craig is taking Cincinnati for the -7 against the spread. I am taking Cincinnati to win outright. Craig is taking Kansas City to still be able to get the win, but not quite by 7 points. Understandable on that one. And then 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, we got San Francisco going into LA. I have the Niners outright and against the spread. Same with Craig there. So as far as against the spread, we are both even on it. Cincinnati and San Francisco. Going back to it, actually, we didn't even bring it up. That divisional round, nice round for Craig there. 3-1 on the divisional round. Almost was all road dogs until that crazy Buffalo Kansas City game. Almost went my way 3-1, but I just went 500 on that one. So, yeah, not too bad. We'll see how we do at the last week right there till the Super Bowl. Should be awesome. I didn't have anything else. Anything you want to bring up finish
I
off
was gonna bring
tonight's
up the Evander
episode.
Kane thing, but we've talked about that a bajillion times over. I think we're done with it.
Whatever.
Everybody knows my thoughts on the Oilers signing Evander Kane. I'm an Oilers fan, and I'm not ecstatic about it.
No.
Let's just throw that out there.
I hope
Olympics
he
starts
gets right.
next week.
Hey, fuck it. That's the only thing I'll say. I hope he gets
100%.
right, man. Just figure it out.
100%. He had there was a great interview with him in Canada on TSN where he just sat down. It was like an hour-long interview. They split it into 2 segments. And he was very candid about everything and just saying, listen, I know I've been a fuck up everywhere I've gone, and like this is my last chance.
Right.
And hopefully with that mentality comes the idea of like, listen, I got to get this right.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful for the guy because he's a tremendously talented player. Edmonton gets him on a steal of a contract because of the fact that he has screwed up everywhere he's gone. Right? So if he comes good, you're going to get a really good player. I think you got to get right before you get your money, not the other way around. Right. I don't think this situation ends well. Outside of that, Olympics starts next week.
Hey. All right.
I will be. I'm a big Olympics person. Canada. I don't know if it's this way in the U.S., but in Canada, the Olympics are like a huge fucking deal.
Oh no, yeah, no. I think that'll be great. I think we should definitely dive into some Olympic stuff. I'm very interested in that. So we'll be doing that as we wind down the Super Bowl here, end of football, and yeah, we get in some Olympic stuff. That'd be great.
Clear eyes, full hearts. It's the Pro Bowl next week, boys.
Oh yes. Yeah. Hey, yeah. Already players dropping out left and right, but so it'd be, yeah. Hey, maybe we hit on that since we won't have a games to specifically talk about. Well, we'll have the Super Bowl to talk about, but it will be still away.
Yeah.
I've always had some good ideas, I think, for how to revitalize what the Pro Bowl could be, because the Pro Bowl,
I feel like I've had a couple of them too. So
growing up, the Pro Bowl was something that was like fun and shit, and they just got to make some tweaks to it to maybe get it back to that place. But yeah. I suppose that remains for perhaps next week's topic. I suppose we'll close it out right here. This has been good old sports cliches. This is episode 14. Hey, we've made it. 2 tutties, a couple extra points worth right there. Into the conference championship games. I'm Jay. That's Craig. Thank you all very much for joining us. Until next weekend, we'll see what we got as far as the Super Bowl is concerned. Hope you have a great rest of your Friday.